Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Berean Files. I almost said Salty Saints.
You almost did.
Almost got it. Oh,
Habit.
It's
Love
that
it.
habit. Y'all, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jason.
And we're getting a little
We're getting
slicker
there.
on that. We're getting a little better at that.
I was ready, and then you almost said Salty Saints, so I
I'm the worst.
had to rethink it.
So today we are going to be joined by Seth Kicklighter, and we're going to get to all of his supernatural shenanigans soon. But first, I do want to just kind of give you a little heads up on some things that have changed. So being that we're a little bitty baby channel that's trying to grow, you'll notice that our episodes now have ads, and you may hate that, okay? And I'm so sorry, but we also have to make some money to justify spending all the hundreds of dollars, slowly encroaching on thousands of dollars that it costs to do all this. And so we did need to monetize. With that said, though, if you like what we're doing here and you want to support us, look, we are trying to get a Patreon set up that should be up and running in the next week or two. We're going to have merch rolling out. We're going to have some different, I don't know, probably just one tier to start with. It's going to be like $5 a month. That's going to get you ad-free listening. That's going to get you early access to some of these episodes. Well, all these episodes. And it's going to get you a little coupon code on our merch. So that's all going to be live in the next week or two. I do just want to let you know that. Please, if you do want to kill the ads and you just want to, see us not fail miserably, please give us your money. With that said, let's get right into it. Let's invite Seth onto this screen. What's up, brother? How are you?
What's going on,
Hello,
Seth?
friends. How are you doing today?
Oh, living the dream after we got all that tech garbage set to the side. So thanks
Demons
for
trying to
bearing
stop
with us.
us, man. We gotta beat them up. All right.
I want to blame them, but I think too we're just bad at this, and we're getting better.
I just wanted to make you feel better. I was lying.
Thanks, man.
I do what
Thanks.
I could.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm a good guy.
Yeah. So Seth, you got a book out. When did your book come out? And tell us one more time. Yeah, hold it up.
Oh.
Show us that back. Oh my. The Spirit Realm Shenanigans. Give us the subheader
It's a thick
too.
one. Give you the what now, huh?
The subheader. It's Spirit Realm Shenanigans.
Oh yeah, Spirit Realm Shenanigans, an unhinged rant exposing the psychic fabrications of discarnate dweebs and Nephilim nitwits. It's
That's
I wanted
the
to-
part.
Yeah. It's filled with a lot of goofy, dumb guy comedy to keep the New Agers and Gnostics I'm not so secretly trying to keep them entertained because they're very high maintenance in that arena, and I'm a goofy boy, so it came naturally.
Well, okay, so hear me out. So I originally heard you on Nephilim Death Squad. Then I heard you on the Biblical Hitmen. And as soon as I heard you, I was like, oh, this guy's fun. We got to talk. So I went and I looked up your book on your YouTube channel, and it's written exactly the way you talk. And I love that. It's so good. Like I was, no, because like, dude, when I'm reading a book, I want to be like, oh, I can actually hear the person saying this. And it's like, oh, no, it's like 100%.
That's what I was going
you.
for, and it was
It's
a lot
beautiful.
to write it. It was way easier to write because I was just trying to flow with it and sound like I'm not necessarily like I use big words, bigger than I do in person sometimes, and I try to make it more than just casual all the time when I'm trying to be deep and eloquent and serious because it's a lot of dark and real hardcore material. But like at least 20, 30, 40% of the book is like flows and phrased in a way that's like a dumb guy comedy. And like there'll be like really dark stuff, and then just out of nowhere, you're just like saying the most effed up stuff. And there's a lot. Listen, I'm a sinful man. I'm a flawed vessel for the Lord, and there's a lot of curse words in this book and a lot of like stupid, inappropriate stuff. But you know what? I'm trying to convert New Agers and Gnostics and give also Christians battle plans for spiritual warfare, of course, and understanding reverse engineering these psyops from the spirit realm. But and I'm not saying I had to do it, but in my soul, I couldn't have written it that fast if I didn't, and I wanted to make it entertaining. So I apologize to any clean, good men and women of God out there who I offend. So I'm sorry.
No, we get you, man. We get you, and we appreciate what you're doing. Before we kind of get into like before we get into your outline here, kind of what we're talking about, can you give like an overall just summary of like for the layman's terms for somebody that's going into this with zero understanding of what you're about to be talking about?
Okay.
Can you give just like a 10,000 foot view of like where we're headed here?
Well, I have material for 3 parts worth of material at least, but today is going to be astral travel lore focused. And if you're not aware of astral travel, it's when you can apparently eject your soul from your body, which I did maybe 80 times. I didn't know it was wrong, my bad. And it is you. A lot of people, when they start, they'll be in the real world and they'll go around like a ghost, basically floating around to places nearby their body. But as soon as you meet an entity, or they may not always present themselves, you will able to portal yourself to other realms and other locations, and there are, I don't want to say infinite, but they're seemingly infinite at times. And there's a lot of there's belief system territories, and there's lower astral realms culminating with tons of lower energy spirits, lower vibration, and the opposite, ascended spirits. And there's heaven realms and healing realms and all these places and more, way more. And you can visit there astrally. And my whole theory, which I'll get into more detail soon, is that it's all basically entity facilitated, controlled lucid dreams where they're controlling every detail. And people need to understand, when I say every detail, I mean effortlessly, masterfully, to the deepest degree you can imagine. I say godlike degree, just not to be complimentary, but to let people know this is there is no error with them. And if there is error, it's more in the delivery of the lore and how silly it is at times. But as far as like the physical sensory control, it's your visuals perfectly controlled. It's your even your intuition is being guided. Your perception, your inner monologues can be hijacked. Just like they can in the real world if you're merging with them. And this is the most merging you can do with a demon without being fully possessed. And I'm saying it's demons doing this, but they are admittedly guides. And your guides are higher ascended spirits, they claim to be, air quotes for people not looking at the video. And they are apparently souls that have ascended beyond incarnating on Earth. They've passed the reincarnation cycle, and they're here to help us. And I think they're demons of the biblical standard, like you guys. But a lot of people outside the Christianity viewpoint will see them as guides, which they call themselves, or their Godhead, which is a culmination of all your incarnations into this like hive mind Borg. And they're teaching you, and they're not subject to time. They can time travel, and they can take you wherever you want, and they're always there. So I gotta cut it off there, I guess.
No, that's great, dude.
Yeah. So one of the things that I have not necessarily picked up on when I've heard you on other podcasts, and we kind of touched on this before we hit record, but you said you grew up in a Christian home. And then in your teen years, kind of went more the atheistic, agnostic route. But then you just dropped, and then you just dropped. You made 80 trips or so before you knew it was wrong. So So give us just a little bit of background of who you are, in a sense of you're not just this unhinged fanatic. Which I guess still could be true. Still could be true, but you're not just out, just coming up with something that's gonna.
It's not off the cuff,
right? It's not.
Reason.
You're not just trying to ride a wave. This is born out of personal experience and how you and kind of how Christ and your Christianity plays into that.
Yeah. So like I said, I was a atheist agnostic sort of for a couple years from my early teen years to probably 21. And then after having my own out of body experience, which I didn't even know I had a soul before then. And it wasn't long or super deep with realms and guides and all that stuff. That's more advanced stuff. But it let me know I had a soul, and I was like, well, that's crazy. I need to figure out what that means. And I've always been not evil, but I was living a sinful life and, filled with, hedonistic tendencies and addictions to things that are no bueno, and people know about them by now, but I have gravitated out of that in the last few years because Jesus is very helpful in those areas. So along the way, I was in the New Age and Gnostic lore, reading a ton, like reading really fast, a lot of books, channeled material, like raw material. And my second chapter in my book, which I don't really talk about in the podcast much, is literally just 12 different channeled sources cross-examined with each other and showing how they cannot all coexist, not even slightly. They thematically align against Christianity always, but in the details they differ. Anyway, I read a bunch of those. I read a bunch of reincarnation evidence books, very convincing. And if we do a part 3, reincarnation evidence is going to be debunked heavily using the vision concept that I think applies to all psychic ability and psychic information, including remote viewing and etc. Staying on topic, though, I read all these books. I read the remote viewing books. I read the astral travel books, which is what we're talking about today more specifically. And I read a ton of them, the top sources, underground stuff. I read holistic healing books and cross-examined them with other people's methods, which can't coexist. Once again, they can't, but they're all healing, and it's like, what does that mean? And I just read all these, and I thought to myself, I'm doing astral travel. I'm into this world. I don't buy into everything I hear. I know there's deception. I just don't fully understand it. So I knew if I read more, I'd eventually come to conclusions and find answers. And I just read a ton. And I didn't read the Bible yet. Well, I have now, but I at that point, and I just kept coming across material that couldn't coexist, and there was like incongruencies and like incompatibilities, and I kept going. But they're subtle, and you have to really, really look to find them. So I read a bunch of this stuff and talked with people who had similar viewpoints, and I was like, "You don't see this, you don't see that. Like we're being lied to there." And the only explanation for all these things I eventually came to the conclusion of, which is kind of obvious looking back now, is that Christianity is the way, and it's a coordinated spiritual realm effort, beheld by demons, Nephilim spirits, whatever you want to call them, who claim and masks as all these characters and aliens and all that stuff. So, I'm bad at staying on topic, but yeah, I had that journey, but I cleaned up my behavior along the way, and I tried to get more wholesome as time went, even before being a Christian. But I was always still wanting the power, that sweet juice, of the astral realm. And I had my own experiences that were deceptive, and yeah, I could get into that or not. It'll take a minute, but we can do it another time maybe. But I had my own, and they weren't as deep and crazy as the ones we're going to get into. But you will find out that the vision control concept is absolutely everything I'm going to say, whether the conspiracy realm of it and assumptions about their intentions is conjecture. You will know that everything I say is possible, and the deceptions going on are more than likely probable based on the theatrics playing out. I know I got off topic a little bit, but am I making
No,
sense
that was
here?
great, man.
That was good.
That was great.
Okay, cool.
Dude, let's get into it because I know you got a lot. So
Yeah,
let's make it happen.
yeah. So I will get into the lore in just a minute, but I like to present my second overall theory besides the astral control thing because it coincides and it's important. And if we do a part 2, that's exactly the material I'll be covering directly. But part 2, if we do that, would be covering spirit releasement therapy lore, which is very underground holistic healing method, mostly prominent in the 80s, 90s. I don't know if it's happening much. I don't see anybody talking about it anywhere, but it was kind of big in small pockets back then. And it is basically a healing method where a therapist will bring a patient in and they'll go into a trance state, the patient, and they will be told in advance to disidentify with any presenting spirits and let themselves channel them. So they're already giving consent to being channeled, by the way, before this starts. And they're looking for entity attachments that are claiming to be via channeling, mostly ghosts of human spirits roaming the earth, aliens, all sorts of different aliens, because there's so many out there. And then you have demons, but they will call themselves things like dark force entities to disconnect from the biblical view, because they're not biblical demons. They're just kind of like similar. That's what we think. That's what we think they're demons, but they're really these other things. And they're
This is like the golden compass. Like your demon. Are you familiar with that?
Not really, but I've heard of it.
Look into it. Everybody has this like familiar animal spirit that follows around, and it's
power
their
animal
demon.
spirit. That's shamanic too. That's a whole.
Yeah,
That's a cultural rebrand of the same thing. It's using the same lore, I'm sure. But yeah, they mask as all these spirits. They channel. They tell you whatever you want. They answer all your questions, just like channeled lore loves to do. And basically, you try to get rid of them by convincing them to leave the person they're inflicting whatever psychological, physical, or mental spiritual harm on the person, because they usually come in when they're desperate and they're suffering from something like spiritual warfare or physical ailments that they can't get cured by doctors, and they heal all sorts of things, quote unquote. Really what's happening here is the demons that are masking as these other spirits are choosing to lay off the pressure that they've been applying to you via whatever. Now, you may have opened those doors, whatever. It's not fully demonic because your sin opens the doors. That's part of it. But they lay off the pressure temporarily and usually come back later after you've accepted and bought into their story and their slop that they're feeding you. So the whole thing is here, they're playing out theatrics via channeling. They're pretending to heal you, but the big kicker here is you have coinciding remote viewing type visions alongside the channeling that is visualizing insane things that they're detailing in their channeling. And we'll get into details in the other episode. I'm not going to get into it right now. But it's coinciding with my vision control narrative that falls into what we're covering today with astral travel. And if they can do astral travel to this degree of, I'm going to explain to you, remote viewing and these third eye visions that are less sensory, less immersive, more intuition based and just instant knowing and downloads, that is much easier for them to do. So I like to point that out.
And real quick for anybody listening, that's not as up to snuff on this kind of stuff, like remote viewing is essentially like what, like we have reason to believe like the MK Ultra programs and things like that were messing with things like remote viewing for like political gain, for governmental gain. The whole idea of like I can go see places I am not. That's the idea, right?
And it's not subject to time either, and you can go backwards and forward in time and see something now and see something anywhere in the universe, because we're all connected via consciousness. There's an etheric overlay to the whole universe, and I'm not saying there's no truth to that. I'm saying it's they're taking that and spinning it into the whole Akashic records of the universe thing, which has its own problems in the lore in and of itself. But you'll find out soon. It's basically lucid dreams, and they control it, and
Well, I was just gonna say we got to do a part two because, like,
yeah.
I'm gonna have so many questions regarding that. Like, dude, when you get into quantum theory and things like that, like quantum science, that's ripe for crossover.
It's
with
trying to
that
explain
concept.
God with different terminology, and but
Right.
they like to make it more New Age and Gnostic sounding, and the whole simulation theory stuff. And this is simulation theory 2.0. I'm changing it. I'm going to rebrand it. But yeah, I don't want to I don't want to rant too long because we got plenty of work to do.
Let's do it.
For people who aren't for people who aren't aware, I don't know if I said already, but I'm going to be reading a lot of excerpts, and some people don't like it, some people do. I need to read sources, because if I don't share the sources and I just tell them what I think and here's what happened, it will not be nearly as believable or convincing. And I've had these conversations enough times to know I need to read sources. So it's more entertaining, in my opinion. But
One of the major pushbacks I get from Christians on topics like this is that, well, people don't really feel that way. That's not, a lot of people don't really think stuff like
oh,
this.
I'll prove it to you. They do.
Exactly.
That's what I'm going for. Yeah, so you kind of have to read the sources, because I'm making huge claims here that apparently nobody else is doing in detail that I've seen, and that's so I need to present it correctly, and I think I do a good job. But we're going to start out with the more flat admissions that are the big hitting information, and the second excerpt they're connected, but the second excerpt's the longest. They're not going to be that long usually, so bear with me. But this first one is from. I should say the sources. It's mostly going to be Robert Monroe's trilogy of books. He's the top astral traveler, book sales wise, and like influence. And he's the started the Monroe Institute, the basically Harry Potter psychic school for all the New Agers, where they train their psychic abilities of all various kinds. So he's the most influential in the world. And I broke down his 3 books in about 60 pages, and in my book, and then Kurt Leland, a Monroe Institute contributor who is also trained at that institute, is a big time traveler, but less popular, less known about. And I'm using about I covered him for like 20 pages in my book, and we're using a lot of his excerpts because they're even more revealing in certain areas. So just putting that out there.
And as far as like application goes on this, like if I'm not mistaken, Ryan Bledsoe, Chris Bledsoe's son, is connected with the Monroe Institute, correct?
Plenty of people are, but they're definitely one of them. Yeah, they're big fans.
Okay.
They're big into the Rosicrucian New Age Gnostic stuff, and they're all about training your psychic abilities and CE5, reaching out to the aliens that love us. They're all about it. Problematic characters, I might say. But yeah, we're gonna read Robert Monroe's. This is his most flat admission, and I find it very insightful, because I've never seen anybody talk about this ever. So it blows my mind. He's basically in the astral, and well, he's describing his astral experiences. He's saying he's talking about one thing that his Godhead, his guide, likes to do for him is put him through a simulation, and he calls it this. So he says, a favorite and quick learn forever method of theirs was simulation. It was based on the ability to create and place into a human consciousness, mine or an Earth-type situation so real and so overwhelming that I could not tell reality from illusion. I do not know that the limits of such simulation talent or technology, nor do I know the extent to which they employ the technique. It may only be in my particular case, but I doubt it. The potentials of its application in other ways begs for broad speculation. In my own pattern, it was usually applied as an instant cleanup of minor emotional patterns that blocked or distorted my clarity of perception or my stability. Usually, I was unaware of such dysfunction. They would note it and offer to take care of the problem. I would be informed that the lesson was about to take place with my consent. Yet, once in the simulation, it became absolutely and totally real. And I lived it. If I did not come up with the desired action, the simulation would be repeated until I did. Even in the repetition, I couldn't break through the reality of the simulation, losing lucidity. Yet once the training sequence was completed, I then knew what it was for. To pose questions about motives seemed irrelevant, or perhaps I didn't want to endanger the good thing I had going for me. What, dude? He just says, yeah, I didn't want to mess up my like connection to the higher divine sources, so I didn't want to ask questions. But it is sketchy. He's basically saying that. I don't know if you have any questions so far.
No, man. I mean, what he's saying sounds like what everybody says when they mess with stuff like this. Like, I don't know that you're going to get into it a lot today, but like the whole getting kicked out of the DMT realm and stuff like
I
that.
had that
like,
planned near the end. I do.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, they want it. They want it. They want to keep going back. They want to keep connecting to, quote unquote source.
It's exciting. It's the ultimate lucid dream. It's lucid dreams with structure and fantastical, grandiose elements that make you feel special and real important and cool. And they feel realer than reality. You've heard him say that, and you'll hear many people say that.
Joe Rogan, all of them.
Yeah, because it's so real, it has to be true. And it can't be a deception because it's so convincing. That's a common theme you're going to see, and we'll get into more later of that. But he admits they can simulate an entirely fabricated, extremely real reality. Done flat admission, my theory is proven already, in my opinion. But there's a lot more corroborating evidence I'm going to bring to the table here. But he doesn't talk about that ever again. And that's in his second book, in like the middle, crammed beneath a bunch of other material. There is no other mention or reference to it in his entire 3 books except that one paragraph. That is it. So and I think it's because he knows the implications of it and doesn't want to talk about it anymore because it'll get people thinking we have some stuff to speculate about, which he even says with his own words. So, dumb idiot, you messed up. You played yourself, Robert.
He's building your argument for you that they can impose a fake whatever on you.
And the top guy in the world, who's the most popular astral traveler, it tells you. So people say, no, they can't do that. I'm like, well, your hero, who you look up to and got into it for and read his books, you didn't notice that one part. People don't notice it. I had to read it 3 times to find that thing. So continuing on, Kurt Leland, we're going to skip between their material. And Leland is talking about the same thing, a simulated reality. And he gets into more detail and tells an actual experience, because Robert doesn't share any of his actual experience, just that general concept, which is crazy. So Leland gets into it more, and he says that his guys are putting him in a simulation, and the goal is to escape. It's an astral escape room. More metaphorical than literal, it seems, but we'll get there and how anticlimactic it is. So he's transported instantly. There's an instant transfer, by the way, which is a common theme here. He's in a castle, like 1600s Italy. He gets the vibe of what it is, right? And he's in this room, and it's filled with all this Renaissance energy type content furniture and stuff. And he says, I looked down at the drawing table where I found a complex perspective study of a cathedral drawn in ink on a piece of parchment. The sketch was in the style of the Renaissance. Could this be a past life, one in which I'd been an artist or architectural draftsman? So one, he's so immersed in this already, he thinks, even though he knows he was just told he's going to be in an astral simulation, he thinks, is this a past life memory? Where he has autonomy, which you don't have autonomy in a memory, so that's stupid. And he questions that for a moment. So I find that hilarious. He says, as instructed, I looked for clues. A quick scan showed me that there was no door. Perhaps it was concealed, like a trapdoor. After all, I seem to be a prisoner of sorts. Some people say to me, oh, what if these are just copy and paste of real places and they can't actually create the whole thing? One, that's dumb for a lot of reasons we'll get into later. But two, if there was a door there, that would make sense. But there's no door in this room, and I don't think anybody's ever built a castle with no door to a room. So, that's a key detail to show you, hey, this is consciously controlled with their thoughts fully by the, entities. So, continuing, he says, I looked down at the drawing table again. The architectural rendering was gone. In its place, I found a piece of typing paper turned sideways. On it was a child's crayon drawing of a landscape, a bright blue sky with a smiling sun and puffy white clouds, green grass and a poorly drawn cow grazing by a metal gate. Before I had a chance to ask myself what such a drawing was doing in the Renaissance, however, I found myself inside it, a real-life figure projected into a cartoon. A wind of colors flew by, the sun set, and the crescent moon lying on its side rose up. The moon had a big nose and was wearing a nightcap. A music box began to play Beautiful Dreamer, and the moon started to sing along in the voice of Frank Sinatra. A chorus line of 5-pointed stars whirled and jigged between verses, occasionally chiming in. The brown cow never moved, however. It remained frozen mid-chew, grass dangling from its mouth, faintly pathetic. The sun and moon seemed to be attached to a revolving wheel that kept spinning faster and faster. Day alternated with night so rapidly that they blurred together, flickering like a strobe light. And then, just as suddenly as I'd been whisked into the child's drawing, I was outside again, seated at the drawing table. The architectural rendering had reappeared. I don't know if you have any interjections, but that's the level of control and goofy stuff we're talking about here, is what they're capable of.
No, no, it feels like it's like a Disney princess. Like, you know,
This
what
is
I
the
mean?
most
Like,
ridiculous excerpt I'm probably going to be reading, but they get silly at times, yeah. But
yeah.
they're not trying to claim it's a real place. Keep in mind.
I
Right.
They're-
I don't know that he even thinks that that's necessarily a real place. But then at the same time, it's like he can't keep track of what
he loses
is and isn't.
lucidity throughout it. We're about
Right.
you're about. I'm going to read the next excerpt, but basically he, and I'm using my words to describe what happens, but he forgets momentarily, but then remembers why he's there to escape multiple times throughout this whole long process, which I'm shortening and summarizing quite a bit. And he then remembers why he's there. And keep in mind, I think what's happening is his guides are jacked into his thought process, and they can dim his lucidity and max it out and make him feel stupid on purpose because they want him to fail, so they can come in and save him and be like, hey, you need guides here, you need our guidance, which is a whole common theme you'll see reoccurring.
Real
Go
quick
ahead.
on that thought. So, have you watched Black Mirror at all?
Yeah, I've seen most except maybe the last season or something. And I don't love every episode, but the British
No.
stuff was on point.
Yeah. So on this last season, there is an episode where a guy's wife goes into like a coma, but they can bring her back by putting this chip in her brain. And they can, and basically they can do exactly what you're talking about via tech.
Oh, really?
Where they can make her super, super happy. So he has to buy her these little booster cards and everything. But like,
That's right.
What I'm saying is like everything you're saying, it almost feels like it's teed up for like transhumanist agenda stuff as well. Like,
Oh, yeah.
why couldn't there be a future where we opt into this on a technological level? And I know you're not
it's
going
coming.
there, but you're kind of
Not right now.
hitting me with that. Like,
Well,
yeah.
it's funny. I'm glad you brought it up because how do we know that tech is really doing all the legwork and it's not the tech is the permission slip to be merged with an entity who's going to
Right.
mask and claim it's the tech. Now, I'm not saying tech can't do these things and mix in with spiritual, etheric energy. I think that we absolutely have and can advance to that point. But I think there's a real effort to make sure whenever things go down, the conspiracy Christians, they want you to think it's all tech based. As opposed to maybe tech helping aid certain trance states and not entity actually facilitating a lot of the legwork. I think it's a combination, but I think we need to keep that in mind.
So where would you like? Do you sign off on Jamie Walden's approach? Then I think you do, right?
I'm confused about it because I love Jamie Walden. I think he's well-intentioned and right about a lot of stuff overall about the Great Deception coming, but he also gets information via skiffs from untrustworthy sources who he seems to trust. Or at least understand that, like, he seems to believe a lot of the info. And even if they're being honest with him, how do we know they're not being lied to? I think the government's full of spooks. I think if you're in the disclosure narrative, I think Tim Burchett, Anna Luna, I think they're all acting and playing part of a script. I think it's all script. I don't buy it.
Almost maybe like he's in a similar position as say like Timothy Alberino, where he's receiving information, and while I do think probably is like well intentioned, how can you trust your sources? Why do you trust your
Yeah.
sources?
Now, Jamie Walden doesn't trust all the government sources for sure, and he's pretty clear about that. I think Timothy Alberino is more problematic in the sense that he's way more trusting, like to the obvious spooks, and it's. Now, I've been a apologist for him for a while, but even though I disagree with his take on aliens and the God in the center of the universe or heaven in the center, all that, but I'm getting nefarious vibes as of late, just because he keeps attacking like meat suit theory and the fact that these things are demons, whether they are or not, and you believe they are or not. Any biblically aware man sees the patterns of the days of Noah and what's happening here, and he does too. But he is like in denial of the possibility of like potential actual demons in meat suits, which is totally it's homunculus lore. It's totally possible. And I've even been had interactions with him on Twitter where I did a whole laid out. Hey, here's why your theory of meat suit theory being debunked is totally debunkable. He says it's because they're so chill and can maintain a calm state in front of these people, and they're not murdering and being feral constantly. He says, well, because Greys are not feral constantly, that means they're not demons. Have you ever heard of possession and acting and how they are possessing tons of people on the world stage, bare minimum, and they are constantly in character? Have you ever read any channeled books where they're constantly doing hours and hours and hours of channeling for weeks, months, years with these people, and they never break character once, and they're demons? and they're playing out these elaborate visions with perfect control. Do you think they're too feral to handle it? No. Whenever they have exorcisms and are, being a puff in their chest, that's also acting. I'm not saying they're not getting kicked out by the authority of Jesus. I think they play to exorcists and try to teach them material by confusing them. I think a lot of exorcists are, getting these things wrong because there's patterns of material in the holistic healing side that show the same thing happening with Christians or Catholics. And I think they act all the time. So the fact that you say, oh, they can't act and hold their stuff together as a alien with humans around for brief moments, you're wrong. That doesn't make any sense.
I don't want to drag you off the rails, so
Yeah.
I was going to say,
that's fun,
if you think, yeah, it is. If you think about it, I do have a question about the whole acting concept, but we'll save it for later.
Hit me later, man. I do have plenty to go through.
Yeah.
So we're not even done with that last excerpt where he was in the cartoon world and then got pulled out, and the sun and moon were flipping instantly like a strobe light. Crazy stuff.
And Frank Sinatra was singing.
Yeah. Very classy stuff. I love it. So he says now, the study vanished and I found myself wandering through a desert with a clarity of logic that startled me. Intuition control, keep in mind. I resolved to seek out the witches and warlocks that must have been responsible for this bizarre change of scenery. Even though he knows it's his guys, he forgets control of the mind. Perhaps they could tell me how to escape this reality in which I've been imprisoned. I walked and walked. The desert remained featureless and as it had when I first arrived. I was lost, but that didn't stop me. I kept on walking anyway. Suddenly, my perspective shifted. I seemed to be seeing myself from far away, looking down on myself as I walked. The desert planet I was walking on was so small that it spun beneath my feet with every step. I was wholly responsible for its rotation. I panicked. I began to feel that I would be trapped in this barren reality, wherever and whatever it was, forever. Without transition, I found myself back in the architect's study. So there's a cohesive, seamless events happening here. People are just going, oh, that's just random dream stuff. He's just dreaming and thinking it's a guide. No, he's having conversations with these entities, and they're having a cohesive, seamless chain of events happening. It's got structure, even though it's kind of all over the place. And then he forgets why he's there again, and he then thinks he's the Count of Monte Cristo, which is I don't know if that's based on a real guy, but that's a character from a book. And I think he's thinking it's a past life again. And then the instructor, his guide, comes in a form of a woman and opens a secret door and then comes in and says to him, "Let me ask you something," the instructor said. "Where on earth are you able to walk through a crayon drawing while the sun smiles at you and the moon and stars are singing? Your study contains bits and pieces from every historic period from the last 500 years. We threw in everything but the kitchen sink to get you to realize this was a dream, and we finally had to put that in too. All you had to do was realize the utter impossibility of everything you were perceiving and tell yourself you must be dreaming. That's the escape secret." Oh, I'm dreaming. It's lucidity. And you know why they're saying that? Because in other parts of the book, which I didn't cover right here, they say the most important thing you can do on Earth right now is develop your psychic ability, especially astral travel capabilities, because guess what? When you die and you're traversing the astral realm, you're going to be confused and all wonky and like bow-legged doing it. So you got to make sure you're trained up so you can navigate the astral realm and not be confused. So they say the most important thing is to achieve lucidity in the dream state. In the lucid dream state, because you can go from a lucid dream to an astral travel with a transition that's seamless. You can jump from one to the other. What does that tell you about the nature of it? That they're so connected. So that's the most important advice. Not moral progression, not being a good guy. Lucidity in the dream state and astral travel. Which is why they keep messing with the lucidity to say, you need to do better. You're doing a bad job. And it's manipulation, the whole thing. So, interesting thought. I didn't know if you guys had any thoughts on that.
They're changing the scorecard, where the scorecard is actually, have you put your faith in Jesus Christ and trusted in him for salvation? They're turning it into, this is your training ground for you to find your legs for the afterlife, which is you floating around the astral realm.
It's going to be freaky. You got to get used to it. Yeah. Which is anxiety inducing if you believe it. You're like, oh boy, I'm not ready for this. I better get to work. And I was doing that more for fun and the power. And I was in that negative mindset where I just wanted to I've craved spiritual experience. And I thought this was the closest thing to it. I've had such a dry, boring life outside of that in a spiritual sense. And that's what people, they've really denied God in our lives in a secular way in the culture in the past few decades, especially in America, especially to where, finding out these things are true and then real, you get excited and you're like, I want to try that. I've been so starved spiritually. Back in the day, hundreds of years ago, people were all aware this stuff was real. Maybe not the details, but I think that layer as a layer of like, oh, we're so starved that this is how desperate we are to get something back. And we'll take whatever we can get, even if it's evil. So, interesting thought.
You stewing on anything over there, Jason?
I'm keeping up. I'm keeping up. Sorry, I'll lean
I
in.
talk fast and I can't help myself. Yeah, I
Well,
spit fire out
part of
here.
my story, Seth, is that I mean, Zach and I have talked about things off and on for years, but really just diving into this stuff is quite new for me in the last few months.
Oh,
And
like the
so,
new age material and stuff.
Yeah.
to this extent, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's way more elaborate than most people think if they don't look into it.
Like we're both Christian pastors, and so like
Yeah.
we know Bible, and like I've been floating around conspiracy land for some years now, in and out of it. Now I'm probably more in than I ever have been. Obviously, you want to make a
Yeah.
podcast about it, let's do it. But I mean, Jason's just now getting thrown into the deep end. It's like those
Oh,
babies that
yeah,
you take
yeah.
in for swimming lessons, and you just
Dude.
throw them in and let them learn to
And-
float. Like it's kind
And
of
it's
fun.
so interesting and
kinda
exciting,
fun.
but I've been in this conspiracy realm, only a handful of years, but I've been accelerated in my efforts, and I stopped watching TV and listen to podcasts on 2x speed every day instead of while I'm doing anything I can multitask. I'm listening to a podcast and then I'm reading because I wanted to know everything, and I'm obsessive and a little bit too much knowledge prone. Sorry, God, I'm working on it, but I'm trying to help people. So I once you get into this conspiracy realm, you learn how much conspiracy they want you to know because it leads you towards Gnosticism or outside things. And they always do it reverse psychology style now. They're more elaborate where they want you to believe things, but they have to make you think it's your idea, which is a lot of what's happening with the whole hatred of Jews today, which I'm not saying is it somewhat justified with Israel, the government, but it's all scripted and getting you to, they want the world to go against Jews like it says it will happen in the end times, and they have to make you think it's your idea. So they have to put out all this info that is, oh, we caught them, we caught them, we caught Israel doing this behind the scenes. No, they let you catch them. It's delivered script from various sources. That's one example of many. So once you get in conspiracy realm, you have to know they're feeding you conspiracies, and a lot of people who get into it early fall for the ones they want you to fall for. So you have to be very careful. A lot of them are true, but it's half truths and deceptions.
It's all
Does that make
Michael
sense?
Aquino's mind war.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's that playing out. I mean, on the big stage, or at least
Absolutely.
what he had kind of created the idea of. But now it's
Yeah.
you're seeing.
Great Awakening is funneled in a way they want it funneled, and there's truths coming out with it, but the ultimate truth is to stop you from following Christ, and if they can keep you from that by feeding you all these other fun ones that are adjacent or not relevant to that, they're going to let you have it, especially now as the time is coming close to these things to be progressing. Anyways, I'm going to go on forever if I don't stop. We got more. So we just talked about the simulations, admitted, controlled, vast, and silly. So then we can talk about Monroe. He uses this word rote, R-O-T-E. It's his word for like a knowledge download memory packet. It can be like if you're in the astral and an entity or a guide wants to transfer you a complex idea or concept, and they don't want to communicate telepathically back and forth forever, they'll just say, here, take this. They'll give them a rote, and then they'll ingest it etherically, and then they'll instantly know complex, vast topics to a detailed degree. Sometimes these rotes are simulations where they're fabricated, and they'll instantly transfer you without your consent because you're already consenting by being in the astral, and they'll take you to whatever they want. And an example that I use in the book is he is in the astral. Bob is Robert. I call him Bob, and he's meeting this astral alien soul from another planet who died, and he's like traversing, trying to find a new home to reincarnate on. He's near Earth, and he sees Bob, and they're talking, and he's trying to explain to Bob what happened to him, how he died. So instead of just telling him, which he could pretty easily, he gives him a rote, and the rote instantly activates a simulation where he's instantly transferred to this character. The character's name, by the way, Z-55/Lou, L-O-U, all caps. Dumb name. I hate it. Lazy.
Sounds like Elon's son's name. every
Got
time
him!
I've
Take
heard
that,
you
Busk!
say, every time I've heard you say it, I'm like, that's Elon's son's name. Like,
That's so
it's
funny.
the same idea.
No, it's Kyle. That's crazy. Yeah, so that's the entity's name. Alien Z-Borp name, totally made up. And then he gives him this rote, and he's transferred to this alien planet that Lou came from. And on the alien planet, he seems to be in a body. It seems to be physical more than astral, obviously. And I don't know if he's in his body or a fake entity body that's the guy, I don't know. But he has autonomy, so he's not reliving the past life memory of this character because he has autonomy and he's moving around. So it's different. So he's walking around having awkward interactions with people there for a while. And then he finds, and he says it's like Earth. It's similar, but not quite. It's weird, but it's like Earth. And I'm like, well, yeah, they're not that creative. They're not going to get too crazy with it. So it's like Earth, and he meets these military types who are badgering him and like, where's your ID or something like that. And this is all irrelevant because out of nowhere, what follows is a giant tsunami coming in and killing everybody in the entire area. which he then dies and has a traumatic kind of death, and then comes back from the rope back to the Lou character and is like, oh crap, and he's like, shook up a little bit, and then Lou's like, see, that's how I died. You couldn't just tell him. You couldn't just tell him I died in a tsunami on an alien planet. You had to give him a post-traumatic. You had to give him PTSD from the experience, which is crazy, and it feels real and it feels very immersive.
I hate to keep bringing this back to the mind war thing, but that's the whole idea. It's that if you can create trauma in somebody, you make them more suggestible to accept what you're trying to impose on them, right? And I do have one question, really quick, man. What is a rote?
Oh, it's download of information, which is a lot of things compact into like a little zip file, essentially. And when they receive it, etherically, it's not physical; it's metaphysical. Once you receive it, it's a download.
Okay.
And
now,
it's like Neo. It's like Neo in the Matrix learning kung fu.
It's the same thing, except it can be information, but it can be simulation immersive immediately. So it depends on what they want. So it can be either. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It's not really a thing. It's the same thing. It's just they just download information at whenever they want, and they say, "Oh, it's here. It's this thing we're passing you." But no, they just are always jacked into him, and they're making him
their
think.
way of pretending they're not always doing it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it.
They have to make you. They have to make you think you're independent to some degree, but they're always there, and we'll get into that more. So another example of the rote thing is, I'm not going to get into the whole story because it's so convoluted and extra detail and unnecessary, but. He's meeting this one character who's important later on. He names BB, a dumb name again, lazy. Now, it's not their name. I think he's just calling him that. But BB is friends with AA, annoying, sorry. And they're coming from an alien planet on tour. They're on an astral tour bus, literally, with a tour guide and everything. And they're going across the galaxy to all these different planets. Earth's their last stop. And AA is like, oh, wow, that place looks cool. I want to try it out. And he's talking about Earth incarnation like it's a ride on a roller coaster. And he ends up going to incarnate. And BB's like, no, this is dumb. I want to get out of here. And they're like teenagers, basically, the way they talk.
This is Rick and Morty.
Yeah, it's so Rick and Morty. Yeah, it's so
Spaceballs.
And it's so silly. And their story in the book is so important later on, but we'll get in there. Not today, probably. But so AA goes and incarnates on Earth, and there's no time, so comes right back out like it just got off a ride. And then BB's like they're like just a pouty teenager, angsty teen vibe, and is like annoyed that he's like waiting for him. And then he comes out and gives him a rote. So this rote is being relived by Bob. I forgot to say he got a rote from BB telling him how he got there. So Bob is now BB, not has autonomy, is reliving the memory of BB as a spirit in the incarnation meeting place where they figure out where they're going. It's like the airport for incarnating. It literally is. And then BB is now getting a rote from AA, his friend who just incarnated, and showing him what he lived like or something that happened to him. And now Bob is experiencing BB's reliving of that, going inside Russian doll style into the next one. Now it's not really going in one rote to the next rote. Really, it's just switching, and it's just another simulation. But he thinks that he's going inside of a memory. Inception, roteception, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's elaborate and confusing, but that's what he thinks is happening, and that's what he tells us is happening.
He's creating the illusion of like an infinite nature.
Infinite consciousness connection, yes.
Right.
That's what I would say. Like we're all connected, it's all accessible. It's Akashic Records type stuff. So it's very fun. We got more though. We got I call this astral documentary propaganda, which isn't escapable even in the astral. The propaganda. So he says the facilitators, which is another word for guide, it's another genre of them. The facilitators fulfill a variety of functions in the after-death zone where you go when you die, depending on the station to which they've been assigned. Thus, they may be broken down into subgroups identified by the specific tasks they perform. One night, my guide arranged for me to watch a documentary in the astral that provided an overview of these tasks. I was brought to an area of non-physical reality that I perceived as a conference room large enough to seat a dozen people at several small round tables. At first, I seemed to be merely watching it. Moments later, I was actually inside it, personally witnessing the things that I described, while a voice explained what I was seeing. An invisible voice explaining what I'm seeing, always there. Immersed in the astral documentary propaganda. Physics goes inside of it, without any warning. Instant transfer. So... And then they tell him, they spend like multiple pages, which I'm not getting into today, I describe in the book, multiple pages describing what happens when you die exactly. And it's a horrific horrific details. It's kind of scary. It's kind of spooky stuff. And the way they describe the guides helping them get through their rehabilitation in the after death zone, and how it's perceived differently by different people, saying, "Oh, it's because you perceive it this way because of what you understand," and that explains all the discrepancies between astral lore because it's non-physical and it's open to interpretation. So there's different descriptions of how these things carry out between the astral travelers, but it's explained away already. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
cool.
No, I'm like, it just, dude, listening to all this, it just really bothers me how if I were to just give somebody the simplicity of the gospel and what's laid out in scripture, these same people that believe this would be like, that's crazy. And that blows my mind.
Right.
Like, that absolutely blows my mind.
Preaching to the choir, buddy.
Yeah.
I know. Well, it requires them admitting that they've been wrong about a lot of things and have to now morally change their philosophy. And no one wants to do that. They'd rather believe crazy stuff than philosophically evolve into a more wholesome place. That's the world we are in, though. This Babylon 2.0 collective mindset that it's been programmed into us. I don't feel bad for those people. They got a little bit, but they got that's on them. We got more. Sorry, I'm running on train tracks right now.
It's all good, brother.
So these next few are going to be somewhat shorter, and they're just to remind you of the level of control here that is admitted. So one of Bob's quotes says, "One of the greatest enigmas of this whole affair is that someone or more than one has been helping me from time to time in such experimentation. Perhaps they are with me every time, and I'm just not aware of them. I do not know who these helpers are or why they are helping me. They certainly do not seem to be guardian angels. Their assistance seems to be more of their choosing and deliberation than mine. They are rarely friendly in the sense that we understand the term. The feeling of gentle but firm hands on each side of me was very strong. The same hands turning me around to leave, much as one steers a blind person, could not have been more vivid." So even in the astral, where you have autonomy, you're still pushed around and guided very, very, very overtly. So that's flatly admitted.
And he's kind of recognizing some of these aren't exactly nice, right?
But the thing is, it's like kind of smart on their end because it's giving this it's not like too good to be true, perfect, angelic, every way, flawless, no wrongdoing. It's kind of giving you this like more believability because they're more nuanced and more human-like in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you listen to the confessionals?
Yeah, all the time. I've been shouting out Tony constantly. I've mailed him.
Yeah, right. Did you see the guy that just went on not too long ago talking about getting sucked up to the second heaven?
Are you talking about the members episode with Jade 848? I do a whole thing on this. No, wait. No, are you talking about the guy who had the near-death experience?
Near-death experience, he was in a coma.
Yes.
Well, he talks about how some are, clearly bad, some are more benevolent, some are gray. And he was saying how, but at the same time, he was very aware that none of them were actually gray. Like, the bad guys are just clearly the bad guys, but some are parading as good guys and gray.
Yeah.
And so, I found it interesting that he saw through the ruse. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Just you kind of.
I have complex thoughts on that one because I've heard controversial stuff about his book that I don't know about directly.
I don't know anything about him, man. I just caught a little snippet of it. So.
Now I'm not going to get into it huge right now, but I'm just letting everybody know these demonic visions and NDEs. Not all the time. I think there's some real ones with God and Jesus for real, but I think not most of them. I think they do for Christians, especially if if they seem to be aligned with that. I think they do fake heaven NDEs, and
Sure.
some of the telepathy tape kids go to fake
I was
heaven.
going to ask that. Yeah. Okay.
Now I cover it's a whole thing. I have more info on it than before when I wrote the book, so it's very nuanced, and I'm not saying I have a for sure answer, but there's fake heavens, absolutely. And I can talk about it later, but they do it to a Christian perspective, more so Catholic with the whole Mother Mary veneration. They include that in the fake heaven. And one kid says he went to heaven multiple times over many weeks, and he couldn't hear God talk one time because the noisy angels were talking over God too much. First of all, if God's talking, you're going to shut the hell up if you're an angel. Second, there's no way you're not going to hear him. It sounds like they just didn't want to give him some specific lore and words of God, and it sounded unbiblical. So they're just like, let's just make it seem like he's there for a minute and then get him out of there. I just don't buy it. I don't buy that ever happen to anybody. If God's talking to you and he brings you to see you, he's going to make sure you know what you're hearing, and he's going to have a purpose for it. This sounds pointless and just for fun, like a roller coaster. I'm not saying the kid's wrong or doing anything wrong. He's manipulated, but he's used as a tool to, put out disinformation potentially. Not all of them, but a lot of them probably.
Considering you sort of brought this up, I do have to ask, because with all this talk, we've done a couple episodes on like the divine feminine, on the lady, all the Chris Bledsoe stuff. And one of the questions that came up is like, Steven?
Steven, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I love Steven, sorry.
Well, it's a PH. It's a PH. I get it.
I know, it throws me off.
But like one of the questions that came up is like, is that where the Marian dogmas came from? Is that where the Marian apparitions came from?
It's
and
not,
with the
it's
stuff
not
you're
uncorrelated.
saying, it's not. And there's going to be Catholics that hear this that hate that. My mother-in-law probably included. But it just like, for real, like it's a real question that has to be asked. And I've posed that question to them before, is it's like, how do you know that's from God if you have no standard to hold it against?
Yeah.
Except tradition itself. And I don't want to make this a Catholic versus Protestant thing, but
I would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my thoughts there, and I think the if you're praying to anybody but God and Jesus directly, if the saints or anybody, you're messing up. And I've heard lore, and this could be not true, but it sounds true, that demons can call themselves or identify as certain characters, and if you call them Mother Mary, you got a demon calling himself Mother Mary, boom, you just gave a prayer to a demon. I'm not saying it happens, but I've heard people claim it does, and I don't doubt it at all. And why else would they want you to pray out to anybody but God and Jesus, unless it was a way to legally loophole their way into getting influence, which they absolutely are capable of.
Well, it's what the Bledsoes are doing, right?
Oh, yeah. They pray to the lady, I guess, right?
Yeah, so why can't that happen? Yeah. Anyway,
wouldn't shock me the slightest. Yeah, we got plenty. So I call this one Supermind Take the Wheel. And it says, your destination seems to be grounded completely within the framework of your innermost constant motivations, emotions, and desires. You may not consciously want to go there, but you have no choice. Your supermind or soul is stronger and usually makes the decision for you. So even the locations you're visiting is often, if not completely, decided by these entities. But they call it, it's your soul, and he knows better than you. So just trust him. He's going to make the decision, even though you don't want to do it. He literally says that. So all these visitations have pre-planned goals of dissemination of certain information and guiding him to certain belief systems. And I think that it's important to note that he admits that. Again, there's a few more short ones, and these next four are short little confirmations he's had after his Monroe Institute started, and he's training all these psychic out-of-body travelers. And he says this is the data he's collected, and he's figured these things out from not just himself, but all these people. He says one of the things he's figured out is they can at will change the temperature of that visited human body. Interesting. Then he says, notice how easily any potential anxieties or fears are overcome by simply a pattern of radiation emanating from strangers. Important to note, in the Bible, when angels show up to people, do they hijack their senses and calm them down or do they freak out and say, hey, calm the heck down, it's chill? They always say, do not be afraid, and they let them freak out for a moment because it's overstimulated, it's freaky, it's a big visualization. I don't know what it looks like, but it implies that they're not hijacking your chemicals like the demons do, even though they're fully capable of doing so. They choose not to because guess what? It's manipulation. So I think that's important to know.
That's good.
Yeah, and then we have the entire history of humankind and Earth is available to them in the most minute detail if needed. Well, read channel lore for 5 minutes, cross-reference any sources out there. You'll see their historical takes on tons of information is thematically aligned mostly, but completely incompatible in the details. And they're giving you facts as history, but they are so misaligned in so many areas. And I spend 45 pages on just cross-referencing these details and all these different subject matters. You can't say that because how are they either all of them are wrong or lying, or one of them is right and the rest are lying. And either way, it's sketchy. So, and why are they lying?
Well, it shows that there's no unity among them, right? Or
I think it's intentional. It's intentional. I think they don't have one cohesive story because people will gravitate towards what they want to believe and what makes sense to them. Most people aren't going to cross-reference all these sources. They don't care to do so. They're not going to be desiring to do that. They're going to buy into whatever aligns with them or what they hear first. And then anything outside of that, they'll just disregard. They know people are like that, and if they create one counter story to everything that is cohesive, it'll be easy to identify it as a demonic deception, as opposed to muddying the waters with all sorts of things. Why didn't they create one counter religion to Christianity? Why did they create all these different various belief systems via utilizing men and deceiving them? Because they're catering to muddy the waters and make Christianity look like one in the drop of a bucket. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same logic. They follow this pattern in all their disinformation. And in part 2, if we do, you will absolutely see there's so much illogical things, but they're catering to cultures and trying to create various belief systems that are cohesive a lot, but cannot coexist. So
Because they don't need you to buy into one belief. They just need you to not buy into Christianity.
Right.
Exactly.
That's it. Right.
Exactly. And they go through great lengths to muddy the waters there. So there's that, and then they say not only can they utilize the vocal cords and breathing apparatus, channeling, but they have total access to the memory storage lodged in the individual, admitting they can access all your memories, all of your thoughts. They can control them if you're allowing yourself by consenting and merging with them to certain degrees. They can, influence your thoughts as they do in our waking life. The more we sin, the more we open that door is what I believe. Very, gradual. And going full divination into out-of-body travel, that is the biggest door you can open besides some of the worst crimes against humanity. I think a cult practice, desiring power, desiring knowledge, is instant opening door access. So I think it's important to note if they can access all your memories, and if they can do that, and they're a hive mind, which I fully believe, and that's the only way they can pull off these great deceptions if they're all connected. And they all have telepathy whenever they're giving us psychic abilities. And the aliens all have telepathy and can access each other without thinking. So they're in a hive mind. Partially. They're still individuals. So if they have a hive mind and they can access all your memories and thoughts, think about what your phone can do with the little bit of data your phone collects on you. Now think about if demons connected to an etheric AI hive mind Borg have all the memories of everybody on Earth, or at least those not protected by the Holy Spirit. I don't know if there's a discrepancy there. But what can they prophesy? What future predictions can they make? Feed it to mediums, get you to believe them. That belief equals more consent for them to go on mission and activate certain things in your life. That's why mediums, when they give them a prophecy, which don't always come true for sure, but they remember the hits. They get hits because they have data, and their data analysis collecting and giving you prophecies. And they're also in prophetic dreams. I think they're not they want you to believe they're time travelers, not subject to time, because it aligns with their lore. So I think it's BS. They can't time travel. There's a whole chapter I have on that. But it's all data analysis, and it's not. And that's also gets us to the remote viewing stuff.
So, quick question: do you think they have access to the memories and ideas of believers?
I say it really fast, but I said I don't know if Holy Spirit people are protected to a degree, and I'm sure there is some layer of that. But I think if you sin, or the more you sin, even if you're a believer, I think you are open to certain degrees. So if you're a believer, but you're going out, smoking, drinking, doing drugs, having a bunch of sex, whatever, I think you're going to be more open, maybe not fully, than to someone who is a full, stick up their butt, good guy, like very wholesome. Not that that's a bad thing, of course. But I'm saying this is an assumption based on the data, and I could be wrong. They could have total memory access to everybody, but the thing is, even if it is protection for some people, it doesn't apply to the vast majority of people on the planet. You know what I'm saying?
Right, because most people, I mean, all of us at some point or another are opening ourselves up to forces of darkness when we align ourselves with them via sin.
Exactly. So I think
that makes
I think
sense.
everybody's open because we're all sinners. But I think it might vary in degrees. Like someone has more access than others. But if you're not protected by the Holy Spirit, zero protection, full memory access, absolutely, in my opinion. And that's how they. Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify, I mean, I just want to like tie this with a nice bow.
Go
like
for it.
You're kind of saying it could be some protection or complete protection for people under the protection of the Holy Spirit.
Yes, but if you're protected by the Holy Spirit and then you go out and sin and do a bunch of nasty stuff, I think that absolutely opens the doors to influence and demonization, not possession fully. But if that opens the doors to that, then why couldn't they access your memory or at least parts of it, or or influence you partially? I think it's degrees, and the more of a good boy you are, the more protection you get, and vice versa. Now that's from influential thoughts. Is that from them reading you? I know it's from writing data onto you like a file, but is that the same for reading? I like to think there's a pattern there and it's correlated, but I'm not for sure. And I think the majority don't have protection in that way anyway, so it's not totally a huge topic to need to be dissected, but it's absolutely a good question, and I love that because I thought
I'd have to chew on that. But
yeah.
But either way, they definitely hold their own memory of what we've done or we've not done,
Right.
and they've seen patterns in our own lives.
They have perfect
so
memory,
they may
yes.
not have direct access to our memories, but they can simulate that as
They can
much
observe.
as
They can
possible.
observe us in real time, and then
Yeah.
collect their own data based on that. Besides just tapping into us, yes. So
Right.
Yeah,
and they're
that I
always
can
around.
bite on instantly. I can
Yeah.
bite on that
Yeah.
instantly. Yeah. Okay.
So
right on.
that's just important to keep in mind because people are like, how can they predict the future then and give us prophetic dreams and stuff? And I'm like, that's exactly how data collection. And your phone predicts all these things about you. What about if your phone could read your mind, be connected to an AI? It's just an interesting thought.
Or if it saw everything you did in your waking life too, right?
There you
Like,
go.
I mean, your phone only sees what you do on your phone. Well,
Oh,
maybe.
yeah.
I mean, I got in the car at 11:30 a.m. and it said, "You want to go to Qdoba?" And I was like,
Right.
"Yes, please."
Right.
You know what? I just know we're gonna get backed up if I don't skip ahead a little bit. So we're gonna skip a little bit.
Sorry, dude. I know we got
No, you're good. This is good. Like good back and forth. I'm just so OCD with this stuff.
I will be right back.
Cool.
So I'm just gonna really quick explain this one instead of reading it. But in Robert Bruce's work, which he's another astral traveler I cover a little bit, he talks about if you're in the astral, before you go into a deep realm, if you're in the real time zone, our world, he says you can jump into a painting, any painting, and boom, you will get an astral simulation created around that'll perfectly match the painting, but it'll be deep and immersive. And guess what? If you wanna meet some of your dead loved ones, just put a dead loved one picture, mood board it, put it on, paste it onto the painting, and boom, you go in there, you'll create one. He says it might be a thought shell form of your subconscious creation of them, but it might be a great way to contact the dead.
Is this okay? Is there a tie to that and like what they do in like some Asian cultures where they will put their like the patriarchs over their families? Like for instance, if you go to a
I
Thai
know what you're
restaurant,
talking about.
you're going to see their patriarch of their
They'll
family
have
on the wall.
candles and a whole like
Yeah.
you know what? There might be something to that. I haven't thought about that, but it's definitely a ancestor veneration thing, which is some cultures are more prone to than others. But yeah, that's an interesting thought. And then he also talks about going into mirrors. He says if you jump into a mirror or a highly reflective surface in the astral, you likely will come out of it like a portal into a reverse image world of your exact copy, everything perfect. Now, I thought this was baloney when I first heard it, and I went and tried it out when I was in the astral, and I went through my mirror thinking I'm just going to come outside the other side of the wall, and then boom, I'm going through a portal, and I'm in a reverse image world, and I see my body sitting there, and everything's reversed, and it's, not a huge thing, but it's so instantly, like, freaky, and you're, like, feel unsettled, and you're like, oh, am I going to get stuck here in reverse image world right now? And I just was like, if I go into my body, am I going to be in a different universe, and things are going to be reversed, and I'm going to be right-handed now, and dumb stuff like that was going through my head. And I ended up going back to the mirror and jumping in my body because I was scared, so... That's an interesting story.
Are you familiar with Stephen Bancars?
If I saw him, maybe. I'm bad with names. I'm better with faces. But who's
He came out of the New Age, and an astral projection is what caused it. He encountered a demon, but the demon tried to stop him from coming back to his body. Is basically what he claimed. Whether that's legit or not, I'm just saying that's what he felt was happening.
I don't think they can ultimately stop that. Maybe well, here's the thing. They are controlling the visuals. I think they want him to believe it's like once you're jacked into them, they control everything. You have autonomy to move around, but you're guided and you're moving with thought. You're moving with your thought and telepathy. When I first got into it, it was hard to control where I moved around because you had to really focus and lock in. But honestly, looking back on it, I'm like, wait, how do I know they just weren't either failing to read my thoughts because I wasn't as merged as other people were, or probably not that, but more so, how do I know they just weren't in control the whole time and I just thought, oh, I'm failing at this. I'm moving the way I don't want to. And I think I was just being guided, and they can read my thoughts and know where I want to move. And I think that's what usually happens. But often it would be not the case. And I'd be like, this is really hard to move around. But I got better at it as time went, but I think they want you to think that it's a skill you develop as opposed, over time, so it seems genuine. If they just instantly take you to deep realms and do all this crazy stuff with you, and you have perfect control, it's not going to be as believable, and you're going to go, wait, that was really easy. People talk about, this is a hard skill to develop. I think they have to build this whole case, and they want to make sure you're an asset first, instead of just some, casual tourist, which is return on investment for them. They have to allocate their resources. But yeah, there's plenty more to get into. I'm skipping just a little bit. You've heard before, but there's some good stuff. Okay, this one's fun. So Kurt Leland, in his book, he is he is saying, his guides are telling him, hey, you're going to be tested before the next step or whatever. And they visit him in a dream. So they come to him in his dreams, which is connected to astral travel, absolutely. And he says, as if I'm in an unusually vivid dream, I became a single blade of grass. A strong wind blows me this way and that. I feel exhilarated. All at once, I become aware that I'm surrounded by millions of other grass blades. I make a startling realization. I can simultaneously maintain an awareness of myself as a single grass blade and as a multitude of grass blades. Yet my unique beingness has a precise location within the vast tapestry of grass that surrounds me. Very good, the overseer says. You learn quickly. We've designed a set of images and sensations in order to illustrate certain aspects of the human condition, he says. Our intention is to show you the evolution of human consciousness and how it looks from our perspective. Now, they're normalizing the whole Borg mindset, which is, again, I believe demons they have an individual, precise personality, but they are connected and cannot be disconnected from their hive mind Borg, and I think they're trying to normalize that concept. That's the whole joining with source. Let yourself absorb into the source and escape reincarnation, and you'll be happy, but you're part of a hive mind. There's no individuality. And I find that very interesting because they want to normalize that. Also in a lot of media they do.
Is
do
this
you have any
sort of
thoughts?
like the go clear thing in Scientology?
I know a lot about Scientology, but I forgot exactly. I mean, they talk about removing your thetan levels and clearing them, which is sort of similar to spirit releasement therapy without the labels. It's kind of the same logic. I would say it's probably similar, but I don't want to say for sure. You know what I mean?
That's fair. Yeah, I'm no expert. It just sounds like similar language. That's why I ask.
There's very likely a correlation there. And I should say they spend a lot of time talking about in the book. I gave a summary, but after he's a grass blade, which is hilarious, by the way, he gets turned into a flower and he says he feels nutrients flowing through him. He feels great, feels happy. And the fact that they can simulate this and it feel real, who knows how real it actually is to the real experience of being a freaking flower. But he claims it feels as real as it could be. And then he's a bee, and he goes into the beehive, and there's whole metaphorical stuff, ancient Egyptian about bees and all that, with the hive mind stuff. But he flies around like a bee, and he claims it probably feels like to be a bee. That's the level of control we're talking about. And then he's a raspberry, kind of a downgrade, kind of funny. And then he's turned into a human gardener who's interacting with all of these things he was just turned into. And it's all a simulation, admittedly. So that's the level of control we're talking about. If they can do that, all this other stuff's easy. And then Bob, in his book, he talks about the same thing happening, where he goes to the year 3000, which is a whole story in and of itself, and he's time traveled there metaphysically, and he's turned into a leaf, and then a panther, and then a bird, and lives out a few minutes of each like it's super real. And he feels all the sensations. He's flying, he's flapping his wings. It's deep simulation, and it's instant transfer, no mess ups in between. It's a very ironed out skill they have. Do you have any thoughts, brother?
I just real quick. I mean, honestly. So I had a dream once that I am convinced was like a visit from a demon.
Yeah.
Now that's kind of what brought about my come to Jesus moment. But the way that dream played out was very similar to what you're talking about right now, where it's just sort of this instant scene change thing. And it's like you are fully immersed in the next environment, and it's like you don't wonder how you got there. You're just immediately like, oh yeah, I'm here. This is normal. This makes sense.
And there's like structure to it, and it's random a lot because they want to keep it that way to keep you from getting the wiser of it. But it's absolutely a common theme you'll see in the astral lore is instant transfers to very different places. So you got to keep in mind it's a seamless skill that they have mastered.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah. So we got
carry on.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, we got more. I am at... Okay, so this one's pretty on the nose, honestly. It's in Bob's first or second book. He talks about focus levels. And the focus levels, there's like focus, I think, 9, 7, 13, 15, 20. He skips numbers, but it goes up to like 50-something. But 27, focus 27, each one represents a different location in the astral or different brainwave state that gets you to different access to different layers of the infinite consciousness universe. And focus 27 is specifically your made-up fantasy dream world, which people use in between incarnations as a vacation home between incarnations, where they can create whatever they want. They're their own god. It's Mormon heaven. You can create whatever you want. And now I'm just going to read excerpts before I get too off topic with it. But it's on 154. So he says each individual is invited to create his own personal and special place within Focus 27, a place within he may return at will. The forms that these places take are as varied and unique as the participants themselves, ranging from log cabins by quiet streams to clumps of trees, South Sea islands, palaces of crystal, and corners of one's heart. Saying whatever you want to create, a little vacation home, you can go there. And he visits his dead friend, who's totally the real guy in this Focus 27 of the guys, and he's a freaking thought form wife that he created from his imagination and keeping him company. And it's you can create whatever you want. You can be you can do crack and go on roller coasters and do whatever you want in this place. It's a lucid dream world, but there's structure and coherency to it, and a lot of impossible physics that you can create. So
It's like sin or heaven.
yeah. It's ultimate hedonism. There's that Twilight Zone episode where this guy goes what he thinks is heaven, and he's gambling and he's successful. He's hot chicks, and he's like, hell yeah, this is great, and he's doing whatever he wants. And then he eventually gets tired of it because the lack of meaning, and he gets whatever he wants whenever he wants, and there's no like purpose or fight or struggle. And he's like, I want to go to hell. This place sucks. He's like, take me to the other place. And his guide, his angel dude, was actually a demon. And he's like, who said this was heaven, brother?
Dude.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Are you familiar with C.S. Lewis's The Great Divorce?
I have it. I have not read it.
You should.
Sorry.
You've said
I haven't
multiple
read
things
fiction in
reminiscent.
years, man. I'm
Well,
sure.
it's kind of an allegory in a lot of ways, but like the whole deal is they're on a bus trip to heaven from hell.
Oh, I
But
love
so
that.
back to what you said earlier, but then the whole deal is everybody in hell's miserable, but they love being miserable. So they just want to stay
Yeah.
miserable. But it's like there's so much of what you're saying.
It's my
like
comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah, trauma-based mind control will do a lot to your brain, man. It'll make you do a lot of things. But yeah, I'm not done with this quote here. It continues, and he says, he's talking about being in Focus 27 and guides being there, because you're never alone still. He says, the guidance that may be requested according to our participants, it may be in different forms. It may appear externally or sensed internally. It may be constant throughout all the experiences or may change from time to time. Reports include mention of a glowing white shape, an individual called Sam, a hooded figure who revealed himself as a famous film star, a little dog, the color blue, a human hand, and voices saying, we are here. Some participants do not see guidance as separate from themselves in any way. Guidance and I are one, as one report says. So even when you're in your own personal fantasy land, you are not alone. And they like to present themselves in the silliest of ways, like a cartoon. So I just find that interesting to note, because they are they want you to believe that that's not always the case, but it absolutely is.
And what was the reference to the glowing shape?
He's just saying these are different forms that the guides in this place will present themselves as. Specifically here,
Okay.
It gets a little bit sillier with the characters they utilize, which is interesting. Because they're trying to say, oh, this is your dream world, you can do anything, so we'll present ourselves as anything. And then some people said, no, guidance and I are one, we're connected, we're merged. Yeah, because you're sensing internally all the intuition they're feeding into you. And you hearing their voice or intuitively knowing what they want you to know via download. So, or we're all connected because we're all connected to source. That's what they're saying. Which
Right.
is all disinformation in all different facets.
Okay. I was just thinking about any crossover with Bledsoe and the orbs.
You know,
Idea, but
I'm sure there is, because it seems
Yeah.
to cross into a lot of different facets. Absolutely, but
Okay.
no, I guess it could be the same thing, same archetype. But like I said, they could present themselves as whatever, and they get pretty
Right.
wacky with it.
that seems like a favorite of theirs in a sense.
Yeah, it's like the light being. It's very simple. It's very accessible, and could apply to different things.
Right.
And then people say they see orbs or glowing white shapes turn into cryptids and morph into things, and I'm like, well, is that an astral experience or a hologram? Or I'm sure it could manifest physically, but it's just interesting because people in the astral have the same experience. And then we are moving on to a pretty creepy one that is crazy, and it is some context here. Is Bob is sorry. So Bob is in the astral, and he's talking with his Godhead, his culmination, his multitudes of himself that are all his past selves, future selves, connected to one hive mind. And this hive mind to him is saying, hey, you're the final piece. You're the last one. We need you. You're special. You got to go. They're basically telling him, you got to go find a new universe, dimension, planet, etc. for us to incarnate on, because we've learned enough. We figured it out. Let's go to a better place. You got to find it in the astral, though. Which is weird, because I'm like, why can't you do it? You're not subject to time. You can already move to the future, and it's just weird. But they're asking him to do this, and he gets a little nervous. He's like, "This is a lot of pressure on my astral shoulders. I don't like how I feel right now." And they're like, "No, it's okay. We got you. We'll cheer you up." And then they say, "We can help you with that. We can show you the sample of support you have here in our own cluster. Do you wish to see this?" He says, "Please." And then he describes this in a kind of loose, not poetic, but like loose and fluctuating way. But so it's going to be weird. But he says, "Thousands of hands reaching out to touch me, eyes staring at me with joy and hope, overwhelming radiance I know is love sweeping over into every part of my being. All of these I am, we are, and emotion from the bittersweet smell of success into the pain of parting, mixed with fun and laughter, the anger of ignorance, and the blindness of belief without foundation. The beauty, the sound of singing voices." His Godhead says, "Does that help you?" He goes, "It does. Is there more?" He's getting just fed this like wholesome little visual of all of his 1,000 selves in a little ball, all going, "Hey, we love you. You're doing great." And I'm like, what is their life like in this little hive mind that where they're just sitting there waiting to do this, impress a vision of support? It's just very gross and manipulative and disgusting. So,
Dude, I hate that all I contribute ever is just these like loose connections to like movies and media and books and whatnot. Like, but
that's what we got to work with.
well, I feel like so much of these ideas get repackaged and pushed on us via media to soften us for situations like this.
Absolutely.
Which is
They got
a
a
whole
pre-program,
predictive, exactly. It's a predictive programming thing.
And they go through great lengths to do it even subtly via, just philosophical or embedding lore in very subtle ways sometimes. It's not even always overt. And
Right.
it's just to get you accustomed to the idea and get it in your brain. And it also farms consent because if you accept it and go, "Okay, I'm cool with this," it also goes, "Okay, well, we got the masses now collectively consenting to the reality of the situation." It is also that, which gives them more permission to influence the world further that's the whole veil thinning on the collective scale. It's our collective permissions via we're allowing this to happen. And also voting is like its own form, like voting for a president. Okay, well, everybody voted for this. That's allowed mass consent to a certain degree. It's the same logic, I think. They like to think it's revelation of the method. It's because they have to tell you. It's like for karmic balance. It's like for their own karmic thing. It's like no,
Very
that's
Luciferian.
That's a cover-up story for what's really going on. In my opinion.
So, like, I mean, to that point, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Midsummer, which is
I actually love that director, even though he's not probably the best Christian man. I love him I loved Beau is Afraid and Hereditary. Yes,
insane. I mean, Hereditary is the most insane horror movie ever made, and I'll never watch it again because it was so effective.
I loved it.
But dude, that's one thing. Talk about like growing as a believer. Like one thing that I have to fix in me is my love for horror movies that I really shouldn't watch. But honestly, one thing I love about horror movies is they're the only type of movie that actually calls evil evil. Everything else parades evil as good. Like in comedies, for instance, like everything gets glorified as good and funny. In horror movies, evil is evil. And one of the interesting things at the end of Midsummer, when she's finally kind of adopted into the hive mind of the cult, what do? They all put their hands on her and she's crying and they all cry with her in unison. And then she stops to take a breath and they all stop and take a breath. And it's like they become this one this one unified being together, and that's exactly what you're saying here.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in years. I haven't thought about that. That's a great point.
It's crazy, dude.
Of course they're doing that. That's funny. Oh my god! And didn't she get impregnated by some dude at that place?
Nah, different situation. But yes, that's all in there.
That happens too.
Listener, don't watch Midsummer. Just don't do it.
Okay, I won't.
Do it. Yeah, no, it's awful. But there is some stuff in there that shows how evil works. But
yeah, I just like really well cinematic done movies, and a lot of horror films are usually corny, and I like when they're not. I like when they're like believable to a degree. That's
slow burn.
Like, yeah,
and it's
psychological
more,
horror. Yeah, that's I like them. I think they're evil. Yeah, but I can't help myself. I'm a man. What can I do? So yeah, we got some good stuff here. You said we're going 2 hours,
dude. You do your thing. We'll let you know.
I don't want to push too hard, but I can speed it up when I need to. But we got a couple more things before the Bible stuff, which I like to end on. So we got this one's good. Okay, so here's God's gonna show up here, the real one, they say, and this is where Bob's in the astral floating around alone, and he's put into this astral headlock, and he can't move. He's got, sleep paralysis in the astral. He can't move, right? And a character showing up says, I am the Lord thy God whom you serve. Throwing out the thy, trying to sound all King James with it, trying to convince you, oh, that must be
more
Yahweh.
spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I was like, that must be Yahweh. Who else would say that? And then, Bob is then followed with, he says, he's describing it like the last one, kind of loose and all over the place. He says, a feeling of intense pressure as if I'm dissolving. Now I'm in water. My lungs are full of water. I must have air. Get rid of the water. No, it can't be. It isn't so. There is no water. I have no lungs. I am being made to think that's where I am. It's an influence. I know it's not so. The pressure releases. I can feel fingers of energy probing from the core of me. I can stop this. Close the receptors. Close tight. I remember how. God says, you do not remember. You do not remember. He's like screaming at him. And then he says, but I do. I remember the tests. They were so real. I'm ready for this demanding energy. It cannot harm me. But what is this? What God can this be? It cannot harm or affect me. He just put a vision on him in a controlled headlock. Like, that's not true. And then God says, do you not accept me as your God? And then the idea of a God that threatens amuses me. I let this idea flow out. Do you not fear me? I release a picture of me blowing apart again and again into a million fragments and reconstituting after every explosion. You are damned. You are no more than wasted energy of me. Who is your Lord? The energy fades into a tiny point and vanishes. So Bob, the total bad boy, just defeated God via creating his own mental fart explosion thing and going, take that! And then God goes, I'm out of here. I can't handle this. God of the universe is what they're implying. They want you to think it's Yahweh to do some bad press campaign for him, and it's really silly and pathetic they make him look. And I'm like, I don't think God of the universe is that silly and pathetic. I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but it's a bad acting.
Not.
Yeah.
Well, no, this feels like the conclusion he came to earlier, where he needs to go, oh, this is all just, for lack of better terms, sorry, media reference. This is the Matrix. This isn't real. I control this reality, and the only way to control it is to recognize that it's not real. And then through that, he kills God.
That's
and so
right.
Like, you have
That's
overcome the chains that you've been bound by. This is all Gnostic garbage.
All you have to do is not fall for the deception of the fake image that they're impressing upon you. But they're throwing you a bone, making you think you've accomplished defeating the deception. You're like, oh, I've got it figured out. But it's because the whole thing is so deceptive. They have to throw you these bones occasionally to make you go, yeah, I cracked that case. It's absolutely false flags, and also bad press campaign for God. And now I wanted to cover one that I have not talked about yet in any other podcast. I want to give you guys a special little nugget here because I don't know why I skipped this before. It's crazy. And it's in line with that same thinking of, trying to paint God, Yahweh, in a bad picture. Not calling him Yahweh, but calling him God of this realm, because the whole Gnostic thing says, oh, he's the God of this realm, but above that,
the demiurge.
there's... Yeah, exactly. So they're implying it's him. They're not saying Yahweh, but they're insinuating the Christian God, right? So this is the same thing happening in a different part, and it is crazy. Let's see. So I call this temporary mass lobotomization, all hail the king, and it says, at times in visiting...
chapter headers, dude. The chapter headers.
Yeah, I get crazy with them. At times, visiting in Locale 2, which is the astral realm, essentially, a very unusual event periodically occurs multiple times. It makes no difference where in Locale 2, the event is the same. In the midst of normal activity, there's a distant signal, almost like heraldic trumpets. Everybody takes the signal calmly, and with it, everyone stops speaking or whatever he or she may be doing. It is the signal that he, or they, is coming through his kingdom. There is no awestruck prostration or falling down on one's knees. Rather, it's an attitude of most matter of fact. It is an occurrence to which all are accustomed and to comply takes absolute precedence over everything. There are no exceptions. At the signal, each living thing lies down. My impression is on their backs. Bodies arched to expose the abdomen, not the genitals, he says. With heads turned to one side so that he does not see them as he passes by. The purpose seems to be to form a living road onto which he, capital God, can travel. I have gleaned the idea that occasionally he will select someone from this living bridge and that person is never seen or heard from again. The purpose of the abdominal exposure is an expression of faith and complete submissiveness. The abdomen being the most vulnerable part of the body, that the area can suffer the most damage the most easily. There is no movement, not even a thought, as he passes by. The several times I've experienced this, I lay down with the others. At the time, the thought of doing otherwise was inconceivable. As he passes, there is a roaring musical sound and a feeling of radiant, irresistible living force of ultimate power that peaks overhead and fades into the distance. After passing by, everyone gets up and resumes their activities. There is no comment or mention of the incident, no further thought of it. There is complete acceptance of the event as a normal part of their lives. Is this God, or God's son, or his representative? So, couple notes here. Nobody in the entirety of astral lore or anything I've ever heard in the world has ever told the same story, but Bob has had it multiple times in many parts in the astral. How weird is that he's the only one? I think it's just a creative idea they gave to just him and decided to run with it. Two, it's just more making apparently Yahweh look like a total douchebag, which he's not, by the way. And it's a crazy story, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
I mean, okay, look, I get where he's coming from with the belly exposed, because that's where your organs are housed. Like, I understand how he's coming to that.
That's where I had the problem, the biggest problem.
Really?
That's the idea of bowing before someone is exposing your neck.
In the most submissive way possible.
Yeah, and there's even a tie-in to beheading in Islamic culture and different things that, I mean, you can survive a slash to the stomach.
Understood.
But when you bow in submission and you bare the back of your neck, you are bearing the bridge between your head and your body. And
right.
So
that's fair.
I mean, I get it.
I didn't realize that was the point of a bow, other than just to submit. But that makes sense too. Like, you're offering your neck. Sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off. Go ahead.
But no, that was the spot that caused me the most pause. But I understand why they're saying. I mean, is that just one of the slight distortions from the truth of going?
Well, so I mean, the other thing with all things occultic is they invert everything, right? So these can't be bowing in submission to God, which they wouldn't be, because this isn't God. This is some silly version that they've created. But even that, they're inverting it. Oh no, he wants you arched on your back, which reminds me of Podesta's brother's artwork in his house, by the way. But are you familiar with that?
I can't visualize it, but I remember, he's the guy with the laptop with the Hillary Clinton connections, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're into all the Pizzagate junk and all that.
Yeah.
Just covered it recently.
I'm thinking of Anthony
Austin
Weiner
Picard.
Too, but I know Podesta.
Yeah.
He looks like the father of the Linkin Park singer, they say, right?
Oh yeah, Chester Bennington and him.
Yeah. They say they do look alike. Might be a thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard that. But like, no, his brother in his house has one of Dahmer's victims. It's a picture of the pose they found one of Dahmer's victims in. I think he's beheaded. Sorry, this is gruesome, but it plays
know what you're
into
talking
it.
about.
He's got an arched back with his belly up like that, and they have a name for it. Yeah, that is interesting to me that there's crossover there. But sorry,
I'm sure there's meaning in everything they chose here. I just thought it was kind of like the most disrespectful thing you could possibly do, and God's doing it to you apparently. Overall, and the living bridge part, I'm sorry, it's funny. It's just it's hilarious. The fact that they're making it seem like a legitimate thing, and these people are just okay with it. Oh, these ascended spirits, it sound like medium middle class at best, and not even. Right. And they're not like a lower astral realm where they're all like feral and crazy. This seems to be like a normal area. He doesn't describe the area he's in too much, but it's just one of the many areas he visits with all sorts of life over the universe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean the other piece here, back to the bow thing. I mean, literally, Scripture says that every knee will bow before God, and these aren't bowing.
Yeah.
So odd little, just like, oh, so it's not God. Like,
one of many reasons to assume so. Yes,
for sure. Yeah, continue, man.
Yeah, I got plenty, but we're making decent time.
That piece of art is called the Arch of Hysteria.
There you go. Yeah, the Arch of Hysteria.
And just before you jump on, Seth, real quick, when you bow before someone, there's a sense of humility and rightness in that submissive act. But if you're with your back arched, with your abdomen, that's a very...
It's the inversion.
It's a humiliating position to be in.
Well, you see it in like demon possession movies and in footage and whatever. Like, just the idea of like, it gets contorted and you're on your back.
Right.
And it's like a spider walk kind of thing. Like, it's all like people aren't supposed to be in that position.
Yeah, that it leans into the distortion, the deception, the inverting of truth. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Very good points. So yeah, we got some bangers here. I call this one "Memory Theft in the Astral Hot Tub," and so Leland is in the astral, and he's at this healing center, like a healing realm, where people go with shades, which is what he calls ghosts when they die. They're there to heal from their lived memories. So it's like a spa he's at, literally a spa, like an astral one. And he says a ghost, a shade was seated by the side of the plunge. She was unaware of my presence, yet I had no trouble reading her thoughts. She was about to go back into the memories of a particular time in her life. Apparently, the function of the spa region was to give shades an opportunity to heal themselves by remembering difficult events and figuring out why they occurred. Somehow, I accompanied the woman into her memories, which both of us experienced as if they were happening right now for the first time. So, this is important for later because in part 2, and part 3, there's a lot of coverage of false past life memories impressed upon you. And he's showing here, you can relive somebody else's memory. Just it's a transfer like everything else, but you can make it can feel like your own, and it feels like it's happening for the first time because it's so real and immersive. So that's possible and capable, and that's where we get into the whole past life memories, which in part 3 is like a whole debunk of how they implant those via regression and in children in a really crazy way. And yeah, and he says she didn't initiate it. She didn't know he was there. He didn't initiate it. He didn't try to. He was just pushed into it just by being near her. That's entity facilitation the whole way. There's no like initiation of it on your own, on your own merit. So I just find that interesting to point out. If you got any thoughts, go for it, guys.
The spirit bathhouse thing is
yeah, it's silly.
I mean that's Japanese folklore actually.
Oh,
So, I
really?
mean,
You know what? That's true.
Yes, I
Well-
mean that's the whole movie Spirited Away. That's that whole concept, which is based off of Japanese folklore.
Oh,
so I mean,
yeah.
it just feels
I
like
love
they're
that
just.
movie.
It's a great movie. But what you're teaching me here, and I know this is not where you intended to go, is that demons are just sitting around watching movies all day, and they're going, "Hey, bro."
Well,
we
they
gotta
wrote the
use that
movies.
one."
What are you talking about? Well, okay, it's the
use
chicken or
this
the
one.
egg. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, dude.
No, it's absolutely they're the source of our media for sure, to a large degree. It's a fun time. At least they can make it entertaining for us, right?
So clear something up for me real quick. You said so he interacted with this lady, right?
Yeah.
This is in the astral still?
Yeah, at an astral healing center. She died. She's a dead soul. He's just
Okay.
visiting because he's an astral traveler. He can go wherever he wants where dead souls go, but they have to be there. Well, they can have some degree of freedom, but they can't go back to Earth and reincarnate yet till they plan their reincarnation, which we access in intermission life memories via regression, where visions are impressed upon us while we're open and consenting, which is part 3 material. But let's not skip ahead.
Well, for a second, it just sounded like you were implying that he was actually interacting with another real person. But so you think she's just another
It's
illusion?
implied to be, but it's all illusion in my opinion.
Okay, got it.
No,
got
he's
it.
not
Well, do you-
visiting a real. Yeah.
Do you think, like, though, in the waking world, like people that are connected to these things could have interactions with each other, like telepathically via these demonic influences?
So, and that gets into the Hill thing with the telepathy taped
Yep.
kids. And I have complex thoughts on it, and I'll try to summarize. And I don't have a full answer, but I have partial. Here's the thing: one, like for that example, and for an example like. Let's say people say astral travelers were seen, they'll see people visit them, and they'll see the ghost of the astral traveler visit them. Not often, but it's happened a handful of times. Now, and the astral traveler going there, he's also will say he saw that person he went to go visit, right? Now, is that person really doing that? And it's still facilitated by an entity, of course, either way. And that's in the real time zone, that's not in a realm, so keep in mind it's different than going into a simulation. Or is that person getting a simulation, seeing what they think is their friend, and then the friend who sees the ghost astral version of them, is he just, you know how demons will mask themselves as ghosts and people see ghost apparitions? Why can't they just take your identity and just be you for a minute? So they give one person one vision and one person the other, so they coincide with each other. But are you really there? I don't know.
Right.
But I think either one is possible. Absolutely.
I got one more curveball right
Hit
there
me.
to throw
It's
at you.
a good question.
Okay. So, King Saul goes to the Witch of Endor. You familiar with the story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so he has her resurrect Samuel.
Yeah.
Do you think it was actually Samuel, or do you think? And I tend to think it is, because the response is very in line with what God would say, which is, "Why are you doing this? You're not supposed to do this."
Yeah. Good question. And I'm not going to say I have the perfect answer and I know for sure, but my assumption is one of two things. One, it could be a deception and a fake spirit, and the Bible doesn't necessarily say it's not or it is. It implies it's real because of his answer. But King Saul, if that spirit of Samuel, whether it's him or not, said anything outside of what he said, I don't, even though Saul wanted to hear something else, of course he wanted to, deep down, he's smart enough to know that's exactly what Samuel would say. And they know what Samuel would say. They know who he is as demons. Could they amass as him? Absolutely. Is it possible? Absolutely. Biblical? I can't say for sure, but I think it's open to interpretation. Now, could it have been him? I think so, and I have no problems with it. And then people say, oh, then you can summon the dead. And most people, when they summon the dead, are really summoning a demon who has data and knowledge and information and can mask as them. That's what I believe is happening.
Well,
now,
even if that one situation is Samuel, it's
permitted by God for a biblical purpose in a story.
Bingo. It feels like an isolated event.
He's not going to do that for every person on the planet.
That's right.
And why would he? It's against his word.
That's right.
I think that's what's happening, and it's a rare one-off. Maybe not literally one-off. Maybe he did more, and it wasn't in the Bible. I don't know. But I think he only would allow that if it was a kingdom-furthering purpose that he allowed. Because I don't think that we have the power. Demons have the power to access these people. Just their data memories and then the ability to mask as them, which is very easy. And people get dream visitations from dead loved ones all the time. And there's even a quote in here, which I might get to, that covers how that happens and why as a system in the astral after death. But it's not the same as the whole summoning via magic. It's you getting a currency in the astral, so you get tokens and you use those tokens to go visit people. But you have to earn them by dealing with repressed memories. It's totally weird.
And that all just falls under falls under necromancy, right? I mean, that's just explicitly wrong. Yeah.
No, well, it's divination to the deepest degree. So I think both could be possible. I lean towards. It's hard to say. I'm open to either. I'm 50-50 on that one.
That's fair.
Yeah, we got one more till we switch off the astral stuff and hit a couple randos, and then by DMT lockout, we'll try to make it there. That's a fun one.
This one's so fun.
Yeah, that one's great. So we got this one part where Bob's Godhead, I call Bob binary, and it's a joke you kind of need references for, but we'll get there later. And he's usually there's one character in the Godhead of 1,000 hymns that rotates out. So he's talking to one representative at a time, right? But they're connected. So one of his representatives swaps out with Ashaneen, who's apparently a monk in a past life that Bob was. And his guide has previously called Bob Ashaneen to his face to insinuate this is the cooler version of you. This is the more spiritually progressed version of you. And he calls him that, which I think is funny. So this guy comes out, this spiritually most advanced version of Bob that's ever existed. And he comes out and he offers Bob psychic abilities. He says, hey, do you want any psychic abilities, by the way? We can give you more if you want, like different stuff besides the astral stuff. And Bob genuinely doesn't seem interested. He's like, he literally basically says, no, I think I'm good. I have enough going on with the astral stuff, which is, I respect that. You know, he's not like all powerful.
I know my limits.
Yeah. I think it's just funny to me because I was like, okay, he's not that bad. But so then, which is funny because you got to keep in mind they're outside of time. They already know what he's going to say. But they ask him a question that he says no to, and then this character says, "We did not believe those were needed. Why did you ask, idiot? If you knew he was also going to say that." And then they said, "But if you do want one of us to use your body and talk while you go somewhere else, just relax and go to sleep." Bob says, "No, I don't want to be a channel. That's not a route to freedom as I see it. The nicest way to turn down a possession question." But literally, this freaking demon claiming to be himself just asked, "Hey, if you want, we'll take over your body. If you just go to sleep and you'll go to the astral." No, thank you. That's a little dark. And why? Didn't give a reason why. And then he says, "No, thanks." So that shows me he's not fully possessed. He's demonized as hell, but he's not fully possessed, which you need clear permission for, even if it's in a deceptive way like this. There's books to prove that full possession takes a long time and direct, or at least a ritual completely consenting to it, which he never did. So he was demonized and influenced heavily, guided, but not possessed. So I find that interesting.
I find it interesting that they said we can take control of your body, dude. That feels so much like the man in the Gadarenes, like the possessed man that goes. The spirits are cast into the swine. it kind of makes you wonder, did he have a similar experience as this guy prior to him being possessed by this legion of demons? You know what I mean?
You know, a lot of crazy things are implied to have happened in between the scenes of all these decades of encounters, and people, will ask like, how are they giving this one guy all this like, work? Why are they putting so much work into this one guy and all these other astral travels? Because not everybody who does astral travel gets all these elaborate. They get elaborate stuff, but not as much and crazy as this guy and a few others. And it's like, well, keep in mind, he's the top. He had 3 books. After book 1, boom, top selling astral traveler author of all time by far, made it huge. Got an institute, working with the CIA, having government contracts for MK Ultra programs, potentially, allegedly. And I'm like, he's an asset. He's a top asset. So that he's worth
Seth,
investment.
the government doesn't believe in the supernatural. What do you mean?
I just make stuff up for fun sometimes. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah. That makes sense.
I'm just a crazy dude. What do I know? But yeah, there's plenty of reason to believe they would put all this work into this one man because he's influencing a lot of people to get into the astral travel, which he did. A lot of people, including me. So if it worked on my dummy, it can work on a lot of other people. You know what I'm saying? So now we're off the astral stuff. I have more bonuses, but we don't have time probably. But we got Vicky Joy Anderson, right?
Remind me.
Oh my gosh, I'm a big old fan of hers. I use her work in my dream chapter, and she's a big proponent of. She aligns with my vision control theory, but she only talks about it in the dream sense, where she's had hundreds or thousands of sleep paralysis and Hatman shadow people encounters, and for her whole life for decades. And she's learned to limit them or stop them in later years. She's a hardcore Christian, but she's interviewed tons of people with similar experiences for many years and came to some pretty crazy conclusions. Now, she's had so many encounters, sleep paralysis-wise, and you know what sleep paralysis is and the shadow people encounters.
I've had it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us have. I have too. You can only move your eyes and look around. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this, but this is going to blow your mind maybe. So for anybody not understanding how real these simulations can feel and you be manipulated by them, if you've had sleep paralysis, you probably know what this is like because she theorizes, and I believe her, after interviewing a lot of people, that the sleep paralysis realm is a realm that's a dream realm, and it feels real because they make it feel real. And the reason you can't move your body is because it's not your physical body, it's your astral body, and you're dreaming still, and you're not awake yet. You're still asleep, but they make you think you're awake. They upgrade your lucidity to make you think you're awake temporarily. And then their manifestations you see are dream elements that have impossible maneuvers. I'm not saying they can't manifest physically in the same way, but it seems to be these are probably not that. Now, this gets into some crazy stuff. So the reason she believes this is because she eventually started to notice things out of place, like a window being a few feet away from where it's supposed to be, objects in the room that she never owned being in the room, things missing that were never supposed to be there, colors being different, multiple things, but everything else is perfect. But there's always like 1 or 2 clues that show this is not my room, and it can't be because that doesn't exist right there. So what does that mean? That means these could all be fabrications, and you believe that they're real because it feels real and it feels scary, and they're also impressing fear upon you. And they'd rather you just believe it's all about loosh harvesting, which I'm not saying is not part of this, but that's what the whole Gnostic side is. They want you to think that's why we're being harassed, not because of some greater, deeper psyop going on there to convince you of certain things. But my point is, I believe that most, if not all, sleep paralysis is actually a dream realm that feels super real. And then when you can finally move is when you open your eyes and then you're awake, and it's a seamless transition because you're right there and it looks the same for the most part.
Well, to your point, I mean, have you ever been asleep and like your alarm goes off and you're like, well, I'm just going to close my eyes for a second. And then you start dreaming again, but you're dreaming that you got up and started doing the things you needed to do.
Yes.
Yeah, it's that same concept. Yeah.
Exactly. So what does that tell you about the potential to blur the lines here? Now, people ask, oh, well, is the room messed up slightly because they're not that good at attention to detail, which we can see already how their attention to detail is pretty perfect. I think it's a consent thing and having to be revealing of, they have to leave clues. And I think this is because you're not consenting to astral travel. You're being a victim to harassment. Maybe those people also did that too. But this is I think this is more deliberate, and maybe there's different reasons for it, but I think that the differences of the room are clues they have to leave legally loophole-wise so that you have a chance of figuring it out. That's an assumption I'm making, and that's what she leans on, but we don't have a for sure answer. I think their attention to detail is perfect, and they wouldn't mess that up so much. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they do mess up. But when you're in these other realms, you don't actually have a real thing to compare it to. So it's very possible that they are messing the room up because it has to be a perfect replica. So could be a layer there. I'm
Yeah,
not
without
sure.
permission, they don't have full access.
I think so. But who knows? It's hard to
Right.
say. Either way, it's a deception, and we can gather that because a lot of people have said similar things. Now, I didn't talk about this before. This is a fun one that I forgot to, but if that's true and that's a deception and the sleep paralysis thing is a fake room, you look at these stories and these testimonies. You have not a ton, but quite a few testimonies I've seen of people claiming to get visited by, people get the alien visits and astral abductions, and I believe they're physical too, but there's a mixture of both, and they like to combine the two and make them think they're one, and they can make them feel physical when they're not. So, people will get encounters with gray entities showing up, and they will show up while they have sleep paralysis, and they'll see them, and the gray entity will go, oh, he won't say this, but he'll be like, oh shoot, you can see me, and presses a button on their belt, a technological button, and on that button it transfers them instantly to a shadow person, and now they're a shadow person. And what would that make you think if you believed it was real? Oh my God, shadow people, they're just aliens with technology, duh. And if this is all a fabricated simulation, they're planting elaborate disinformation to give you a false flag. Oh, I caught the gray. I caught him switching up. They're not that stupid. Even if that is a gray transmorting into whatever, I don't think they're going to get caught that easily so many times. You know what I'm saying? They're planting this idea, and this filters into other very complex concepts that I have to talk about in like part 3 probably. But they use these simulations that you think are real to plant disinformation about the reality of what's happening to you, which is pretty smart. I'm not going to lie, but I don't like it.
Yeah. I do have a question. In all your study on night terrors, did you ever come across a common occurrence of like a noise present, like an electronic noise?
Oh,
that they
the
use?
humming. I've heard multiple times what I feel like a UFO near me would sound like. Definitely, and I think they're trying to present that idea to where it makes it physical and seem like it's near you physically. I've felt it and heard it. Humming of what sounds like a craft that's anti-gravitic. And now I'm basing it off of a vibe, but it's a very strong one.
So what in my experience, I never actually saw anything, but I could feel it there.
Yeah.
And I could feel it standing over me, and I wouldn't open my eyes because I was like, nah, not happening. And mind you, I had just fallen asleep watching the movie The Gray Man. The Empty Man, which is literally about summoning a tulpa. So that's great. So after that, I was like, not gonna do that anymore. I fall asleep, and this thing is standing over me, and I hear this noise. It's like boom.
Yeah, it's just like
And it
that.
just starts going higher and higher and higher and higher. And when it reaches that like crescendo, it starts back over. And dude, it felt like 2 hours. And I
wonder if it's
so
like a binaural beat
mad.
thing. If it's like
I
a
don't know.
frequency thing. I don't know if
I
it's
don't know.
tech. I like to think that's all astral. It can be tech, but I don't think they're floating right outside your window. Not that they can't. I don't think they would for this purpose. I think they can easily do it all astrally and intuitively and energetically and impress the vibes
Sure.
upon you consciously.
Well,
So
personally,
why waste
I
the
don't.
resources?
I don't think they were trying. I honestly don't think they were trying to convince me of anything. I think they just wanted to ruin my day because they knew that I believed in Jesus, and I just think it was more of a, hey, let's scare him. Like
Let's
more
get him
than
paranoid
anything.
and worried about his safety, and
Right.
then that fear equals a lack of faith in God, right? And
Right.
it's low key a kind of permission slip because you also believing in the image they present themselves. They didn't really present an image, but if they come as a gray alien and they have a tool belt and turn into a shadow person, you believe they're gray. They just got more permission to involve themselves further in your life because you're believing and buying into it. And it acts as a consent form, and people talk about that, and or I'm making stuff up. Who knows? But we got another crazy one, and this is now I credited Vicky Joy Anderson. Love you, Vicky. This is about Sean Tabbitt's work. I'm stealing another thing. And Sean Tabbitt is the author of, I think it's called the NDE Conspiracy, and he's a big NDE knowledgeable on that. He's gone on Confessionals and other big podcasts. And he talks about this one story that stands out to me from Brian Melvin. And Brian has an NDE where he visits a heaven-like realm, and he sees like what seems to be his childhood home, a perfect idyllic version of it, and sees dead loved ones of his that are all like, "Hey, we're so happy to see you. We missed you." All this nice stuff. And they're hanging out for a while. I don't know how long, but eventually they all start morphing, and he describes them as serpent-like demonic kind of creatures, verbatim. They turn into that, and his whole environment turns into a hellish type realm. I don't know how cavern-like and stereotypical, but it transmorphs into this whole thing. And then he's resuscitated not long after that. Now, Sean Tabbitt points out, hey, if that guy got a fake heaven for a while, how many people are being resuscitated before the transformation takes place? Because there's a lot of NDEs that push New Age and Gnostic lore, and a lack of a lack of needing Jesus for salvation, because people go to heaven and come back and go, oh, well, I wasn't a Christian, so I guess I don't need the whole Jesus thing. And that's great disinformation for the demonic agenda. So it's like, if that's possible, how many other things are happening? You know, is that not blowing your mind a little bit?
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's crazy to me, man. So,
well, I mean, it's just, well, it is crazy in some sense, and then at the same time, I'm just like, it's just the same freaking game plan over.
It's on brand, yeah,
over and over. Like, and it's like I almost don't want to be impressed with them. You know what I mean? Because
I know.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
annoying.
okay.
Hey, if I had thousands of years to figure out a game plan, I'd come out with something pretty smart. You know what I'm saying? So for how old they are, it's kind of mid, to be honest.
Well, I mean, it works though, right? Like,
it's
why switch it up?
What's going on?
Yeah, and like you said, it can kind of be tailor fitted to whoever.
Yeah, they can read your thoughts.
Whoever.
They know your desires. They know exactly what to cater to. Past life memories are perfect. They'll cater past life memories to people who are more likely to accept them based on the material, what they're missing in their life, they're giving them in a past life. If they're missing romantic love, or if they're missing a successful career, they can give them a past life with both those things, and they probably will. So you crave that instead of your current life, and look to accessing those memories instead of living your life now.
It's the oh, dang it, dude, what's the dream within a dream? It's like Inception. Yeah. You go to your happy place, live there. You know what I mean? Like, just get caught up in the dream within the dream within the dream. And that's better than reality, you know?
Absolutely. Anything to get you distancing from reality, disassociative, keep away from people, maybe connect with New Agers and similar like-minded people, but it's to get you just more interested in divination and entity contact, because then you're an asset for them. And you can bring others to the faith, you know.
Right.
Let's see. We got more here. Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna hit DMT lockout, because this one is highly requested.
Yes.
The most viral post I made on Twitter, which took some time, but was by DMT lockout explanation, which nobody else seems to share this opinion, because it requires the vision control concept to totally rely on it. And a lot of people who are into DMT don't like the whole demon side of things. But a lot of people are gravitating or loving the concept, I think, and got some naysayers, but that's obviously going to happen.
Well, they can't deny the fact that the lockout is happening.
Yeah, no,
and once that's happening, well, they are still denying it.
A few dummies, not people worth talking to. You know.
Well, I'm saying, but I'm saying, like, the people who have had it. Well, you would just have to say that they're lying at that point. But my point is the very fact that people
specific lies shared by many people.
Exactly. And so, like, at that point, it's like, well, obviously something's doing it. Like, I don't know.
Yes.
Let's hear
it. People, the only explanation I've heard against it is saying, no, they just burned out because they did too much psychedelics, and that's what happens when you do. And I'm like, then why are they all ending immediately when an entity says, you're getting out of here, brother? Why does that happen every time? And why did one... Okay, so let me fill in for anybody who doesn't know. DMT lockout is where you do DMT a bunch of times, which is like a psychedelic that lasts like 7 minutes, but can be time dilated as hell to feel super long sometimes. I would know. It's you can go out of body, quote unquote, or to the astral realms, and they have specific archetypes that seem to be only catered to DMT, which is where they'll meet entities such as the clown jester types that are literally goofy looking, scary alien-like clowns, but they're usually really nice. What is the other one? The machine elves, and like this weird little machine high tech world. And those are two archetypes that I've only heard in DMT realm. They try to make it seem like DMT is accessing certain realms that are harder to access in the astral, but DMT is such a specific drug that it gets you into the specific brainwave state to access these things. That's what they're trying to convey, I think. And there's more entities. There's aliens. There's all sorts of planets people go to, various planets with life. And some people go so often, they meet the same entities over and over, and they have relationships with them, just like these people going into the astral with their guides. And they eventually get annoyed, like the entities get annoyed, and they'll get like really frustrated and be like, you're coming here too much, dude. And they'll say things like, oh, you're supposed to be here to learn, and you're just coming here for fun. They want you thinking that they're concerned about your spiritual education as opposed to you're taking up their resources and time. So then they'll ban people and they'll say, time for you to get out, brother. And then they'll kick them out. And they will not be able to get back no matter how much DMT they smoke, which is usually tons of DMT. And they'll still get the visuals and the trippy stuff, but not the out of body experience. Now, if it was a psychic ability that you practice to your astral travel, and this drug helps your psychic ability, come up into more power, then how come you can't get out of body after you get kicked out if it's a psychic ability that you have without entity facilitation? This proves, in my opinion, that it's entity facilitated, and that the consent form is the drug, which you've already consented in many ways, obviously, after that point. But they just don't want to waste resources on someone who's a dumb stoner trying to have fun. They want people who are assets. They'll give assets these many trips, but if you're just coming there for fun and wasting their time, they have a limited amount of entities. They're a hive mind, yes, but they're not infinite. They only have as many soul or spirits as there were Nephilim who died in the flood, right? So they are limited in number, and they probably have many millions, but they don't have billions, or they would be able to do this more freely. So my whole thing is that they're making it seem like they're kicking you out so that because you're being irresponsible and you can't get back, but really it's just they're allocating resources of their time, right? And Zoltan Bathory, the guitarist, I think, for Five Finger Death Punch, he went on Danny Jones and did a whole 15-minute segment on this whole thing where he got kicked out, and he ended up returning after 4 months of meditating, asking these entities, please, can I come back? Why did I get kicked out? I don't understand. And after 4 months of meditating and doing DMT the whole time, he never got out of body. And then eventually they let him back in. So if it's burning out your receptors, like some people say, why is he letting back in? And then it meets the entities and they say, hey, welcome back. And they're having a cohesive, continuous storyline narrative.
Well, the really important part of what you just said is the fact that he was still taking DMT the entire time.
Yeah.
If it was a matter of it burning out your receptors, that would continue to burn out his receptors. But then all of a sudden he can come back.
And only 4 months, which is a lot of time. But, for healing your, I don't know, it's just stupid because people say, oh, when you do acid, if you do it the next day, it'll be way less effective and way less powerful. And if you do it over and over, it'll be way less powerful if you don't leave a gap of time. But that doesn't explain the entities involved immediately ending it. Like literally that and you're out.
But I'm saying he didn't take a break from the DMT. Therefore, the chemicals would still be imparting on him during that 4 month period. So he's not taking time off. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes,
so if they're trying to throw the science out there, it's not there. Like, there's no argument there.
Yeah, and I put this explanation, and I originally posted it in Andrew Gallamore's post about DMT lockout in January, and I got the most popular comment by far that day, and it blew up later more when it was going viral weeks back, and I reposted it on a bunch of people. But at the time, it was like getting a lot of interaction then, and Andrew would not interact with me, and I was super nice to him in it too, but he hates the whole God stuff, and he's against the whole demon side, and obviously it would be accepting a lot of dark things about your life's work that you've dedicated yourself to. So he's a smart guy, but he's kind of he's Satan's tool right now, and the fact that he's normalizing this and making people think it's okay, and they should be having a extended DMT stay so they can map the realm, just like the astral travelers are mapping the realm. It's the same thing, but they're giving different archetypes and different crazier, more fantastical realms sometimes to these DMT people to make you think it's different.
I don't know if you've heard about this, and sorry if I'm dragging you all over the place,
No,
but I'm wanting to say it was Cambridge University a couple years ago was doing a study where they were putting students on a slow IV drip of DMT to prolong the trips that they weren't just 7 minutes. Okay, yeah. So
like
that's
an hour
still a
or
thing.
two, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they're doing that right now. They got a huge grant or license for it because it's a very dangerous thing, it seems, which I agree with. But yeah, so they're doing testing on it right now, or at least they were months
They're
back.
trying to map out this realm, right?
It's Andrew Gallimore who's part of it, and Danny Goller's normalizing.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry,
and Danny
I'm not really
Goller's normalizing it too. Him and Danny Goller are the top two DMT promoters, and they're both. Well, Danny Goller's more New Age or Gnostic for sure. Nice guy, but he will not respond to my messages, and I keep bothering him, and I think he's offended. But what are you gonna do? So yeah, that's a fun one.
And I think on Saturday, if I read the news right, Trump signed an executive order allowing fast tracking of these substances through FDA, I think.
With Joe Rogan present.
They're healing people. Thank
Oh,
you.
he is
Drugs.
present.
He
I
was
heard he
literally
texted
standing
or
right
something like
behind
that.
him while he gives the announcement. And so it's like everybody's like, and so it's like
okay.
everybody's
He's a
like,
true patriot.
why'd Rogan go soft all of a sudden? Where'd Alex Jones go? Where are all the
People
good
are
guests?
just
Oh,
now. People are just now figuring out that they've been under the thumb of the powers that be forever. I'm like, you don't say top podcast in the world forever if you and have on CIA people constantly for controlled narratives, unless you're an op. And that's I'm sorry I have to say, but Rogan, you're not even that funny, and you're an op.
he literally had the interview where this was like 20 years ago, where he's like, hey, if you just tell me about the aliens, I'll say whatever you want. If you show
Yep.
me what's really going on, I'll say whatever you want. I'll lie to my own mother. And it's like that really didn't age well, Joe. You know what I'm
No, he
saying?
did not.
Like,
Hey, he's
I
a
don't
rich,
know.
successful man, and you know what? They love to keep that, maintain that stuff. You know what I mean?
Good for him, I suppose.
I was having a fun time. But yeah, we are now onto the Bible stuff, which is you guys.
Hey, the Bible.
Now I don't. Now you've heard my right. You've heard we need to cleanse ourselves after all this dirty talk for sure. I know y'all know about this because you've heard my podcast so far, but I am curious if you had any perspective similar before you heard me talk about it on NDS. But I'm basically going to share the story of 1 Kings 22, which is repeated in 2 Chronicles 18. Just give my dumb boy version of the story, and then get into the implications and how it aligns with the whole vision control concept. So, 1 Kings 22 is a story where King Ahab, who's king of the northern tribes for a time, and he's like looked at as one of the worst, evil kings that Israel had, and an archetype that's shared today by some leaders, maybe. And he is he's the king of the northern tribe, which is 10 tribes, and then King Jehoshaphat is the king of the southern Judah tribe at the same time. And they are, I believe, in-laws because I think their kids are married. So they're hanging out, and Ahab is asking Jehoshaphat, who's more of a man of God but flawed, he's asking him, hey, can we band together and get our boys together and go attack Ramoth Gilead, or however you say it, because they want to, take their stuff, plunder them for whatever reason. And Jehoshaphat's like, I don't know. Is God going to be cool with that? I don't want to piss that guy off. Good answer. So Ahab's like, yeah, I'll be chill with it. And he's like, and then Jehoshaphat's like, well, can we get some men of God to confirm this by seeing what the Lord says? And then he's like, fine, whatever, we'll do that. So Ahab recruits his 400 pagan prophets, divinating, remote viewers is what they essentially are. I think it's just remote viewing. And they are asked what's going to happen if they go to war with these people. Literally 400, an insane number of prophets say they get a vision, and they say, it doesn't say they get a vision, but it says that they're prophesying and that they see them being successful, that they are going to win the war and, kick butt, and it's going to be great. Sounds like remote viewing to me. If not, it's a download of information from spirits. Either way, but I see it as remote viewing, and they're seeing a vision. So all 400 get the same info, and they all say, you're going to do great. And then Ahab's like, see, I told you. We're in the clear. And then Jehoshaphat, knowing this is sketchy, but not quite strongly stating it, says, basically, I don't know, can we get like one man, like true man of God, Yahweh, like just make sure just to double check. And he's like, fine, whatever, whatever you say. He's trying to convince this man. So he goes against Micaiah, who is a true man of God, a true prophet, chosen, not divinating, not seeking, not like that. All true prophets are chosen by God. So a messenger goes and grabs Micaiah, and he tells Micaiah, hey, stick to the story. We don't want to veer off. We're trying to get this thing happening, okay? We're going to go kick some butt. And he says, I'm going to tell him what God tells me to say. Whatever, and amen. I love that. So he shows up, and Ahab's asking him to prophesy, and he just kind of makes fun of him at first and tells him what he wants to hear in a sarcastic tone. And then Ahab gets mad and verbally slaps him, says, hey, shut up, give me the truth. And so then he does, and this is where God jacks in with a vision to Micaiah and says he sees, just like, the other guys were seeing their vision, he sees God and his heavenly council communing and discussing what they should do about Ahab, because Ahab's beginning to be a real problem for the Israelite people, bringing them into a darker time. So, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And he says he sees God say, hey, what should we do about this? And obviously God knows what to do, but he's letting his creation play it out and be involved, which, cool, good move.
The heavenly council, right?
Exactly, yes. And one of the angels, I don't know if calling him an angel is accurate, but one of the heavenly council members says, hey, I got an idea. What if I go be a lying spirit in the mouths of these prophets and, totally lie to them? And genius, by the way. And he says, yeah, that's a great idea. Go do it. You'll be successful. So he does. So it's telling you that all 400 of these prophets were jacked into this angel who was hijacking the remote viewing / download material that they were being fed, and totally gave them a false story so that they would go to war and Ahab would get killed in the war, because it's prophesied to happen. So here's the thing, that seems deceptive to people, and they're like, why would God deceive? And I'm like, well, no, it's his angel doing it, first of all, and also he's not deceiving because he's giving him an opportunity now, because they were playing into their lies or urges. Ahab's urges was playing into what he wanted, giving him what he wanted because he wanted to hear that, and then, which is part of the whole giving your heart's desires verses. And then it where was I at? I'm losing track. I was flowing and then I lost. Okay.
Jacking into the angel.
Yes. So the angel jacked in, and then he said, so Ahab's hearing all of this from Micaiah, the truth. So now God's giving him an opportunity to repent and go back on what he did originally. He's giving him both sides to see what he chooses. And he does not choose to repent, and he calls him a liar. And then Micaiah gets sent into jail and tells Ahab, if you go to war, you're going to die. Gave him a chance to repent. Didn't do it. He goes to war, and he gets shot with a stray arrow. Not even really aimed at him, just fell down on him randomly. And Jehoshaphat is out there, and he got manipulated to go into war, but it's his fault too. And he's about to get killed by these people on the other side, and then he starts praying out to God, apologizing, repenting, the right thing to do, and they end up leaving him alone, and God spares him. So he's at least a better intentioned man, but despite being flawed. So the story is here, not only God handled that justly as he could, but also this is showing that the Bible is telling you they have control over our psychic information. If angels can do it, all of this information makes sense if demons can do it as well, fallen angels, whatever. If they can do that, and this astral travel stuff is accurate, obviously it's coming from sources of people doing it, this is telling you directly in the Bible they can control your psychic information. And he tells you don't to be a divinator. You're just going to get lies and your own heart's desires. And I have other verses to back this up as well if you want to get into it, but that's like the most clear, in-your-face version.
Well, and I would even argue that you could make and you kind of already alluded to this, but you could make the argument that spirit on the council was a fallen spirit. As you see Satan, like now there is
I have complex thoughts about it.
Sure, same. But like the idea in like the book of Job where Satan approaches God, and you could argue, is it the same Satan? I know Michael Heiser goes that route. Is it the same Satan? But yet it is the accuser, the adversary comes and says, hey, let me impose this all on him. He'll turn away from you. And God says, no, he won't, but go ahead. And so I'm saying, like, you see these spirits working against the good of man, and they operate within the confines of God's counsel. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, like, there is room for that, I guess, is what I feel.
I'm very open to it. It doesn't clarify one way or the other, but I think it could be either way, and it wouldn't really make much of a difference on a technical term. Right. I'm actually DMing you guys something right now I think you should check out later on the primordial origin and identity of Satan that my male role model sent me, and him and my friend wrote it, and I think it's kind of a huge deal, and I'm going to send it to you.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It might be baloney, but it uses the original scripture in the most hermeneutic way possible, and it's not a fallen angel. Satan is not a fallen angel is what he's pushing overall, and the scripture I think would agree with him, but it's hard.
Well, you got to give me more than that right now. You can't just
I know
you can't do that.
I just did. It's 20. I sent you a 20-page document. I just sent it to you. It is. I'm gonna butcher it if I even try to.
Well, give me the lowdown. What does he like? No. Listen. In most basic layman's terms, what is this guy? You don't have to make a defense for it. What does he think it is?
Giving it layman's terms is gonna not do justice at all. But it's kind of a personification of the of sin in general, and that it's used in a personified way, but it's really a representation of. But it's also a real, tangible thing. It's it's not a created entity. It's a.
You're sort of getting into the power of symbols here. You're sort of getting into the power of the metaphor.
It's like whenever it says Satan was with them, it's like saying sin was with them, sinful thoughts was with them, and when he's communing with an entity that's Satan saying these words specifically, could it be an internal monologue of internal thoughts Now I'm butchering it, and there's actually more deeper layers, and it's actually he discusses it as kind of an entity forming, uh, as an anti-god sort of, but it's not like a fallen angel that was created and then rebelled, and that is defended by scripture, I think poorly with the Masoretic text, and the Septuagint has actually different wording with the whole guardian cherub part, which actually changes the entire meaning when you get into the original text hermeneutically. So he breaks it down way better than I could, and I'm gonna blaspheme if I do it this way.
That's fair.
So,
That's fair. I'll check it out. I
but
was just curious.
it's I'm poorly personifying it right now, but it's kind of a banger, and check it out. On it later if you would like. Totally cool.
Sure.
But it's interesting, and he's my favorite go to like for scripture questions. Like he's a real deal, like knowledgeable guy.
Yeah, I mean, so like get back to like the heart of what this show is, dude. The Bereans. I don't know if you're familiar with Acts 17:11, but Paul commends
Not by
the
heart.
Bereans. Paul commends the Bereans because he goes to them and it says they eagerly heard out everything Paul was saying.
Nice.
Then they tested what he was saying. Then they concluded whether or not they believed him, and they did believe him. And that is what he commends about them, is that one, it didn't matter if he was telling the truth or not. They were eager to hear it. Two,
Yeah.
they tested it. Three, they determined. That's what we want to do here. So I'm good for
love that.
whatever wacky ideas you got, man. Doesn't mean I'm going to believe them, but you can say anything on this show and we'll hear it out. Within reason, but yeah.
I have no short of wacky material for you. Don't worry there, brother.
Right on.
But I did want to read a few more scriptures that I think are relevant here.
For sure.
And one that I'm sure a lot of people know, but I think is very important, is Deuteronomy 13:1-3. And I'm reading the New King James Version just to keep it somewhat old school. But I read the King James in my own time, though. But it says, if there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder comes to pass of which he spoke to you, saying, let us go after other gods which you have not known, and let us serve them. You shall not listen to the word of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. He's saying, if you want to be deceived by these prophets getting fake divination from other information from other people that drifts away from me, you can do that, but this is all a test at the end of the day. And like we need to be tested because this is not our final resting place. This is where we decide if we choose evil or deception or or good or whatever it may be.
Yep. I was just going to say, take that, Joseph Smith.
All right.
Take that Watchtower movement, but hey, whatever. Yep.
Yeah, that guy's silly. And then we got Jeremiah 14:14, which says, and the Lord said to me, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. I have not sent them. They prophesy a false vision, divination, a worthless thing, and the deceit of their heart. One, getting into the whole playing into their heart's desires, but two, a false vision. Now, it doesn't expound upon the literalness of that, but it sounds like entities on the dark side can control visions to me. I don't know. It's used in Jeremiah 23:32 as well. Behold, I am against those who prophesy false dreams, says the Lord, and tell them, cause my people to err by their lies and by their recklessness. I did not send them or command them, therefore they shall not profit at all, these people, says the Lord. So it says false dreams, false visions. There's another one in Ezekiel 13:6-7. Futile vision, false divination. False means lie, and I'm like, well, if it's convincing people in a spiritual experience of these deeper spiritual truths, that probably involves literal fake visions, which is what he's calling it. But people never talk about these things, which blows my mind. And that's what I think all astral travel, obviously, is pretty much fake visions. And if they can do that, what does that say about past life memories? Secret space program memories I didn't mention earlier. They do future life memories in part 3 if you want to cover that. You can metaphysically time travel in the astral. You can access all this spiritual information, but is it true? The Akashic records, is it true? Why don't they coincide with each other in testimony often? It's false vision, and it's because your own heart desires power and knowledge that you're not necessarily supposed to be seeking because God told you not to.
Right. I mean, dude, what we're actually called to do is so simple. Like, I mean, really, like, It's just like, hey, all this stuff that you're just kind of already pre-programmed to do, just keep doing that. Stop trying to play outside of the lines of this thing. Like, it's pretty easy to not go outside the lines. Like,
well,
and
in
yet
this world,
we do.
they're pushing it, normalizing everything dark and evil so much to where we think it's not that big of a deal because it's been so normalized. But back in the day, pre-spiritualist movement of the late 1800s, it was very uncommon stuff or very well known to be demonic, but that's died out. I'm counting Christian societies, I suppose, more. But the stuff's old as time, though. It's just rebranding and repackaging to modern audiences, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. No, once again, back to that whole just rebranding thing all day, every day, forever. I keep saying it, dude, but it's like he's got one play with a really good PR team. Like,
Yeah,
best PR team ever. Just, I mean, a PR team that has all of your info. Like coming back to what you said, right? Yeah,
he's banking on the
man.
fact that we don't have, very elaborate pattern recognition skills, which most of us don't. And
Right.
most of us don't have the time to indulge in such things. And I get that. I've made it my life's work now. So I have an excuse, I guess. But I don't blame people for being deceived in a lot of these things. I mean, I blame them for their heart's desires and choices they make that are negative. But a lot of them are good people. A lot of New Agers and Gnostics are good people and just deceived because the deception is said to be incredibly elaborate. And I think this is proof more so that it absolutely is. And part 2 and 3 is, I guess, even more elaborate and tricky. And they put a lot of work into this stuff, and it's so all encompassing. But once you see it through a Christian lens, you can't unsee the deception.
100%.
It's so crazy how that shift happens, and you see everything.
Which
in
is
your life.
That's why I think they shift their game plan on how they deal with the believer. Kind of like I said earlier, like I feel like in the encounters I've had since being a believer, which aren't many. I mean, honestly, it's really just the sleep paralysis thing. I don't even think that, like, they tried to mess with my perception of things. It was just, let's scare you, because really that's all they've got at that point.
Yeah, if they don't think they can deceive you, I don't think they're gonna work. Like, okay, for example, when I did DMT 3 times, the third time was the really crazy one where I actually got out of body. And this is after I knew of spiritual deception in the spirit realm, but I wasn't on a Christian lens yet, and I wasn't aware of that it was all of it. I thought it was just some here and there, and if I raise my vibrations high enough, I can avoid it because I did the right thing. And I'll meet people of similar frequencies, how they say it. So that's what I thought. So I think I was still too aware of deception, of, like, if an entity came to me and was like, "Hey, I'm your buddy, I'm your higher self, let's go on an adventure." I think they knew, because they know my character, that I wouldn't have fallen for that. I like to think. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. And they just decided to torture me, because what I got was just a whole time dilated as hell, immersive 5D, 6D, morphing, eternal, like, constant trippy visuals. But it wasn't just trippy and weird. It was like I felt pain, and I felt extreme anxiety and fear, and extreme sounds, like distorting metal, like metallurgic type sounds and like machinery, but it sounded distorted through these crazy psychedelic lenses. And it was just constant, and it felt like hell. And I was like, I just want to die. I want to die right now. And it was crazy. And it felt like forever. And then when it was over, the trauma of it sort of faded like a dream, but I still have like flashbacks to it, like I'm in, freaking Nam. And it's just a crazy, it's just, I can't visualize it fully, but I can still visualize it when I think about it. And I think they just did that because they knew it wasn't really worth their efforts to deceive me, because it wouldn't have worked. And they didn't want to, when they do that, it would then push me further into Christianity if I didn't fall for it, because then it would go, okay, well, what's this happening right now with my fake higher self? So they, instead of risking it, they just give me a crazy experience, and then I can attribute it to, oh, I just had a low vibration, that's my fault.
Right.
So
Right.
that's
That makes
one
sense.
example.
Go ahead.
Kind of similar to the guy Brian Johnson that took the 5-MeO
Yeah.
or something like that. That's
The
5,
guy's
10
gonna live
times
forever.
more powerful than DMT. And he said once he got in, he said there was 2 options. He said the first was just this overwhelming fear, and like he was about to be undone. I think he used the word that he was going to be, it was going to shard him or something like that. Like he was going to break apart at the seams, at the most, base level of who he was. Or you just submitted. And then he describes this submission that is so fully, like, there is no room for a lack of submission in any part of your life. And that was the only way for that fear to go away. And then once he submitted, it was benevolent and good and beautiful, and like
Trauma-based
it
mind
just
control, baby.
totally switched.
Well-
And I'm like, that, just the entry, like, can we not, do we have to completely overlook your entry to to get past that, to be like, oh yeah, it was a
That's
good,
the
it was a good
test.
spirit. Yeah.
It's
I didn't know
such
he
a-
said that. That's crazy.
it's such a counterfeiting too of like when someone encounters God, right? Like when you look in the book of Isaiah, in Isaiah 6, when he's swept up into the throne room of God, he is broken. I mean, he's utterly shattered. He's like, I'm an unclean man from a people of unclean lips.
Woe is me.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like, it's like they're trying to impose that same idea on you. And it seems like they can to some degree. It's, like you said with the angels, that when people encounter angels, they're terrified that they're put into this stupor, but it's like, the enemy's going to use that to try and hijack God's authority and his power and his sovereignty and, the feelings you should feel when you're in the presence of God. They want you to feel like you're having that when you're in their presence,
Yeah, it's a lot of the same language of being undone, or that that I have no ability to stand up to this. But the difference is kind of what we say about the difference between fear and reverence, right? That fear is that fear of being, what he said, shard, to be just split apart at the seams, versus reverence, which is an awe, a respect, oh my goodness, I am in the presence of a holy God. My only response is to go, I am not worthy to be in this presence, rather than I am in this presence and I'm about to be destroyed. That's a totally different fear. Does that make sense?
It is, but the second part is, it seems like none of these stop at that. They all then try to turn it around, like they did with Bob, try to make you feel like, oh no, you can kill God. Oh no, you don't have to be afraid. You need to overcome these chains that bind you. And so it's like, they don't want you to stay reverent. They want you to think you're God.
Well, you just submitted and you completely destroyed the destroying force that was bringing that intense fear.
Right.
And now you are in the presence of beauty and bliss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got two things for you, Seth.
Hit me.
One, are you familiar with the Psalm? I had it pulled up here and now it's gone. Nope, I got it. It's Psalm 91:5. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day. You familiar with that one?
Everybody's heard it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's this book called The Dictionary of Deities and Demons, and they go into what the terror of night is. And the Hebrews actually believed in a demon called the terror of night. And so that reference is to a actual Hebrew demon. So I find that really interesting that even the ancients were like, oh no, that's a demon.
They do
and then we're like
that.
Say that again.
They do have names like that, or things that don't really, they're not like our names, where it's just like something that sounds one way or the other. It'll be like referencing to a whole archetype or concept, which I find interesting. So yeah, that doesn't shock me in the slightest.
Yeah. The second thing that I really want your opinion on, talking about the acting thing.
Yeah.
So this is something I was kicking around a little bit. You know how like you look across cultures and you see like, seems like there's a lot of crossover between like Marduk, Baal, Zeus, Odin, Ra.
Cultural renaming of the same stuff for sure.
Bingo. You go that route with the divine feminine, same sort of thing. It's the co-opting of all these names, Mary, and it's Asherah. Oh no, it's Isis.
And one day they can just tell you, oh, all these cultures interpret us, or we gave them different names to appeal to them at the time, but we were just trying not to freak you out, so we masked as these different characters, but it was all ultimately one thing. We're all one thing, and that's what they'll eventually be able to say.
Okay, so maybe you just answered it with that, and I'll have you kind of clear that up. But when I originally was listening to your NDS episode, when you originally brought up the whole, like, they only have so much bandwidth, they only have so many of them, and they can only push this agenda so far given the resources and time that they have, right?
And collective consents, which is about to ramp up, obviously.
Right.
And is ramping up as Babylon 2.0 is increasing every day.
For sure. My question is this. Do you think it's possible that, when you have a demon essentially show up and say, oh, I'm actually Isis. Oh, I'm actually Mother Mary. I'm the divine feminine, whatever. Do you think it's possible, and I think maybe you do based on some of what you said, that these are just archetypal masks that they're putting on, and that there really is no Isis, there really is no Asherah, there really is no, like, this isn't like a one character. It's like an archetype that thousands of them can put on the mask and go show up at your house and be like, oh no, I'm her. And
Yeah, I think they
in an
absolutely do that,
effort
yeah.
to use resources. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's again the muddying the waters thing. If they come as one character to everybody, like Jesus is one entity coming to everybody in certain ways, and they mask as Jesus, by the way. But don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Oh,
They
for
do that
sure.
plenty. Well, part two, we'll get into that. They masked as God earlier, very poorly, but so my point in that is they can mask as one character and they choose to do many. And they usually cater it to cultures. Like, people in Egypt will get a certain character. I want to say Horus and Isis are related to Egypt, but I'm not entirely having that memorized.
There.
And then they'll have Mother Mary for more, the honkies, the Catholics, or, a lot of them aren't honkies, I guess. But they'll cater it to, people who have already some sort of base level understanding of who that is. Because if you come out to, some uncontacted tribe and be like, hey, I'm Isis or Horus from this other area unrelated, they won't make sense of it, and they want to come as something that's somewhat similar to them. So I think somewhat similar, still godlike to the comparison, but I think culturally something that they can that they respect. Like some cultures have different ideas of high society and power and what that looks like, whether it be with jewels or with the skin color or with the way you dress and vice all these things. And I think they add all that into a whatever's most likely collectively to convince a certain culture at a time. So I think they spread it out for that reason, and also because once again, just like the reason they created multiple religions instead of one counter religion, if you create many entities, you can't. It's harder for people to trace it to one thing like we are, and it's pretty obvious now from a Christian viewpoint what's happening. But outside of that, you hear all these testimonies of all over time of all these different encounters with different entities, and you hear the same ones repeated, but then you hear many others with different cultures, and it's the mudding the waters is like the name of the game. They have to make it to where it's untraceable to one source with one concept and one philosophy, even though it collectively ultimately is New Age Gnosticism in that vein, paganism, whatever. They have to spread it out, and I think you go ahead because I'm rambling.
Well, no, I agree with everything you're saying, but let me kind of rephrase my question.
Yeah, yeah,
So
please.
like let's do like one culture. Let's do Egypt.
Okay.
Let's say I want to dupe everybody in Egypt at the same time, which I know they're not doing. Well, they're not probably going to do what I'm saying. But for this example, I'm saying, do you think it's possible that if ISIS isn't really a person, it's really just an idea to be pushed, that you can have 1,000 of these things show up to 1,000 different people tonight in Egypt while they're dreaming, and they all say they're the exact same character because that character's not real. It's an idea being pushed. Do you think that's possibly happening? Because I think like across the New Age, if you have 1,000 Jesuses show up and go, "I'm New Age Jesus," and it's all about the consciousness, the Christ consciousness. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Maybe a Palladian Jesus.
yeah, Palladium.
Yeah, because only Yahweh is omnipresent.
Right, exactly, right.
Yeah,
So
the
back to
lady
your whole,
can't
like,
be.
right, the whole limited resource thing. So I'm
Well,
saying,
they
you
don't
think
need
it's
omnipresence
possible?
for that. They can. I don't think they would do it to the entire world at the same time because that's 8 billion, 7 billion people.
Right.
And they don't. I don't think they have those numbers. I think they're. And I have my reasons for believing this. I think they're somewhere in the 500 million range, which is why they
Sure.
also talk about. They also talk about like depopulating us to that degree. And all the elites say we need to get around 500 million, maybe a billion people. And I think that's because that's about how many demons there are. And they all want one vessel to possess, but they don't want to deal with too many people. And I think they have that many because if you read Earth's Catastrophic Past by Andrew Snelling, which is science on like the ark and how young Earth creationism is totally backed by science in so many ways. Watch Hydroplate Theory by Brian Nichols on YouTube, best video ever. I'm a young
Say that again. It's called what?
Brian Nichols Hydroplate Theory, 2 hour, 40-minute
Hydroplate.
breakdown. It is game changing content, hard to absorb. I watched it 3 times though to make sure I understood most of it. It explains young Earth in the most scientific context and reframes all this old Earth data in a way that you can't deny at least makes sense and is cohesive and scientifically somewhat verifiable because it has more explanations for things that the old Earth models do not have a way to explain. And it basically assumes that the flood was way more catastrophic than we think, and the waters, fountains of the great deep that the Bible talks about exploding like giant geysers were way more violent and filled with water than we think. And the pre-Earth world was more plasma infused via the planet alignments of Mars, Venus, and Saturn, creating a plasma intense environment. Which this is not what Hydroplate talks about. I'm just now learning this new stuff. And they talk about how that's how we lived longer because we were electrically charged and we're an electric universe, and that is life fuel for these entities and us. And that's why we live less now, because ever since that flood, the alignment's also changed, and we have less power electrically to sustain us and keep our life fuel more. I'm wording it terribly, but
Interesting.
elevated. And this is something I'm new to and I'm learning about, and I really buy into it because it makes sense with all my other theories, but I don't know for sure. And it's Saturn is the highest emanator of this electric force and was the biggest part in this old alignment, which gets into the whole Saturn worship and how it's embedded everywhere. And there's very deep layers to it. And it's how the old Earth world was. That's how they lived longer and how things were crazier and bigger. And
Interesting.
that shifted. And that's a new thing I'm into, and I can send you some content if you like. And it's
Well, that sort of plays into the whole like pyramids being electrical storehouses kind
that's
of
a
concept
part of it
as well.
Yeah, I think we were more. Yeah, probably had some psychic stuff going on. I know the Nephilim did, and I don't know if regular humans did, but we embedded with them, and there was a lot of DNA contamination over time. And it says that Noah was, it implies that he was genealogically the only pure human left with his family, or one of the only. It implied that he's one of the few. So that says that everybody else's DNA was co-opted by then.
There is also the concept of having a water dome around the Earth. Have you heard that one?
Yeah, and I liked it for a bit.
Yeah.
I liked it was fun, but this other plasma theory from the planet alignments creating a more plasmified area scientifically makes more sense and has more backing. Then again, I'm not an expert on it. It's new.
Explains some of Tesla's work too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole fourth state of matter thing that we haven't quite cracked, but we know is real.
Yeah.
And
Right.
And it explains. The guy who talks about it explains that it's how fallen angels can kind of transmute between here and there and be a little bit of both because they're plasma based, and they can. I think they can alter that to some degree with their innate abilities. So that's how they can be physical and make babies, but also be spiritual and traversing somehow. I think
Probably some kind of quantum connection there too.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that word is involved somehow.
Dude, we are all over the place. We've done it. We have done part 1, and I'd love to have you back and do part 2, part 3, whenever, man. That'd be fun.
Yeah. I'm
if you don't hate us now and decide you never want to come back, because
my hatred will subside over time. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. I was worried there.
I just have one thing left. Do you have merch? You have shirts?
No.
You
the artwork is sick.
Because here's where I want to go. I want to take every single one of your chapter titles and turn that into a T-shirt.
Oh my God! Wait. Oh, you saw the chapter titles. Okay, awesome.
No, the ones you were mentioning earlier. What's the best one you got?
My actual chapter, because those were sub-chapter headings. Like I do, like
those are just the sub-chapter ones.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
those aren't full chapters. I got to read some chapters because they're funny. I got this one's not the best, but channeled chicanery, spirit releasement shenanigans, a bit lazy, but I had to do it. Bamboozled out of body, that's what we covered today mostly. What incarnation, which is a double entendre. Remote viewing rigmarole. Omnipresence evidence in KJV's endless encodings, literal nightmare fuel, near-death nonsense, telepathy tapes from Tartarus, time travel tomfoolery featuring Ted, demonic detours into adjacent absurdities. Abaddon. Yeah, we got some fun ones. An outro.
Yeah, the hot tub one was what made me think about it. So that
the sub-chapter titles, yes, they get way sillier. I actually have some really messed up ones, but I don't know if they're family friendly. So, but they're hilarious. I have some really funny ones.
We'll help you with that if you ever need.
Absolutely, brother.
No, let me get one more. Ancient nudist. Bob's mind for corn.
Oh no. You gave me all of my editing right at the end?
Yeah.
Really? Really, bro?
I had to. It's a fun one. That's what it's in the book. And it makes sense what I said. It sounds like nonsense, but it actually totally makes sense.
That's wild, dude.
Sorry, I know.
Real quick, dude. I really thought you were going here earlier, and then I'm going to stop and we'll land this thing. But we've been working on some merch ourselves. Are you a Happy Gilmore fan?
I wouldn't say it's like my top comedy, but I dig it like most people.
But like, do you know the meme, like the Go Home Ball meme?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of our shirts we got coming up for Elijah and the Prophets of Baal here. Oh, dang it! Come on, there we go.
Oh, you just gonna do that,
dude? Can you see that bad boy? It's a little
silly.
Ball statue.
Hey,
Come on, dude.
You know what? That's just a good idea right there. That's $1 million.
I think it's very fun. That's all I'm saying.
People are hearing that a lot since the Epstein files came out. They're hearing that name a lot thrown around. So that's definitely a shirt worth getting.
I think so. I think it's fun. Brother, thank you so much for this episode, dude.
This was good.
No, thank
It was
you.
a
Thank
good
you.
time. It was crazy and all over the place and exactly
My
what I
favorite
asked for.
pastime. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Dude, let anybody know where they can find your book, how they can purchase it, how they can
Yes.
support you.
Yes. You can find my book, Spirit Realm Shenanigans, on Amazon, like most books, and also you can buy it through PayHip, and I'll sign it in a little schizo autograph. That's fun. If you order on PayHip, it's a little bit cheaper, and you can find my social media on Sethlehem, rhymes with Bethlehem, but with Seth, and that's on X where I'm more active with my crazy stuff, and on Instagram I'm Sethlehem _ less cool. And my link tree is in my bio of both those accounts, and that link tree has access to my book, my free audiobook, which is 34 hours and have funny voices all throughout.
And that's on YouTube, right?
And Spotify, yes.
Okay, cool.
And it just search up Spirit Realm Shenanigans, ! The audiobook, ! And it's separated by chapter. But you can find it through my link tree. And you can see every podcast I've been on, which is linked there. And you can see, which I'm going on more soon. And then also my favorite theories out there that I've collected into playlists, and a couple other things, my contacts. So, just go to my link tree, my link tree is just Sethlehem as well. So you can find it pretty easily.
Right on, brother.
All right.
Hey, y'all, thanks for tuning in. Seth, thanks for being here, man. Until next time, y'all, stay salty, stay lit, stay Berean. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.